The story begins in a place covered by smoke and fog. Up ahead, a young boy appears in front of a massive building, holding a small notebook. Calmly, he decides to flip through its pages. From a distance, the building's guards spot him and wonder what that could be. They even question whether he's truly human and then conclude that he is. They find it amusing that he's there and comment on how lucky he is. Suddenly, the boy senses something strange. The men approach and ask what he's doing in such a dangerous place. They want to know if he came to rescue the boy who had been captured earlier, and if they were friends. Satisfied, they say it will be a feast day and that Lord Craven will be pleased to receive 2 humans in one day. Thoughtful, the boy makes his decision. Without hesitation, he extends his left hand to launch an attack and strikes the guards, severing their heads. Meanwhile, on the top floor of the building, voices are celebrating excitedly, eager to make a toast. Among the scattered remains, a pile of bones appears, and someone wonders when was the last time they had human meat. Hungry, the men rejoice at finally having food. One of them keeps a young boy kneeling beside him, his captured prey. The prisoner sees a human skull, and terror fills his face. The celebration continues with shouts and euphoria. But suddenly, someone interrupts them with a firm step on the ground. One of the villains is startled by the unexpected presence, and the prisoner watches the scene before him in surprise. Calmly, the boy had made his way to the top floor after defeating the 2 guards at the entrance. The men don't understand why a human would be there and wonder about the guards who should be at their posts. Suddenly, something bounces heavily on the floor. Puzzled, they stare at the object and realize it's the guards' heads. Furious, one of the men reacts to the sight. Meanwhile, the prisoner remains terrified, sweating cold. One of the villains waits for the boy to say something. Unhurried, the boy shows them his drawing and asks if Craven is there. One of the creatures, confused, doesn't understand what's going on. The boy explains that he was told Craven would be in that place. Horrified, the prisoner doesn't understand what the boy is talking about. Another man asks if the prisoner is the boy's friend. Still holding his drawing, he replies that he's never seen him before. Angrily, the villain demands to know why he killed their guards then. Unbothered, the boy replies that they were annoying. Overcome with rage, the man grows furious and calls out to Jeff, one of his men, to get rid of the boy. With a furious glare, Jeff stares down the boy, wondering what would be on today's menu. Another man watches intently, waiting for the moment to feast. Jeff initiates a strike with his sword at the boy, who calmly continues sketching in his notebook. As he decides to attack, Jeff aims to end the boy quickly. Meanwhile, the prisoner remains in a state of shock, paralyzed by fear. With a powerful blow, the boy is sliced into multiple pieces. The villain quickly rejoices at the result. Jeff tells his boss that the cut was complete, but then something begins to happen that catches him off guard. Before his eyes, the boy starts to regenerate rapidly. In just a few seconds, his arm returns to its place, and his torso reconnects with his legs. As he watches in disbelief, Jeff hears the boy say that wouldn't be enough to kill him. Confused, he tries to understand the situation. Suddenly, the boy appears ready to strike back. With contempt, he stares Jeff in the eyes, and with a single kick, launches him far away, so powerful that the man is hurled out of the building. Both the villain and the prisoner can't believe what they're seeing. The captive boy wonders how his body parts could fuse back together. Gripped by fear, the villain begins to sweat and doesn't know what to do. Furious, he screams, overwhelmed by rage, and orders all his men to attack the boy immediately. Meanwhile, he demands to know how the boy dared to invade the zombie men's territory and challenge his subordinates. Without delay, the others rush toward the boy, seeking revenge for Jeff's fall. Prepared, the boy readies himself for the next strike. With force, he punches the ground, causing several bones to erupt around him. One of the zombie men doesn't understand why bones appeared there. With a swift motion, the boy grabs one of the bones tightly to use as a weapon, and with a single blow, defeats one of his enemies. The leader of the zombie men sinks into despair at the sight. Facing the next opponent, the young hero holds his gaze steady. With agility, he jumps and initiates his new attack. Using the bone as a weapon, he strikes one of the enemies with precision. As soon as he defeats him, he throws the bone away without a care. With an exact movement, he extends his left hand and hits his own stomach as if searching for something inside. More and more shocked, the young prisoner watches everything. The boy then pulls out one of his own intestines and transforms it into a weapon, striking another enemy. With a single blow, he slices the man into several pieces. In silence, he holds his organ while thinking. Without interest, he throws it away, leaving the men terrified. Once again, he hits his own stomach and pulls out new parts of himself, hurling them at his opponents and hitting them directly. Without hesitation, he keeps searching for something inside his own body and pulls out another intestine, ready for the next attack. With force, he throws it, hitting 3 enemies at once. After hitting them, he notices a huge hole open in his body. However, the hole quickly closes as if nothing had happened. Without much enthusiasm, he remains there, surrounded by the zombie men. Facing the next opponents, he watches the situation with boredom. In their hands, an organic matter begins to form slowly, and soon takes the shape of a ball resembling a brain. The surprise takes over the zombie men as they witness the transformation. Without hesitation, the young boy throws the ball, hitting one of their heads. In a continuous motion, he tosses the ball into the air once again. He then decides to use one of the bones as a bat and prepares for the swing. With power, he strikes the ball, launching it at one of the zombie men. He gets into position for another powerful swing, and hits another enemy square in the head. Another strike is launched with precision. One more villain is hit with no chance to defend. In a short time, the young hero defeats almost all of his opponents. The leader of the zombie men stares at him, consumed by horror. Meanwhile, the still-bound prisoner is stunned by what he just witnessed. Furious, the villain asks what that boy could be. Suddenly, the young man appears in front of the villain with total calm. Not understanding, the man wonders how he appeared so suddenly. Politely, the boy asks if he was the Kraven he had been looking for. The villain keeps a thoughtful gaze at the question. Meanwhile, the boy waits for an answer. Curious, the man wants to know why he was looking for Kraven. With determination, the boy replies that someone told him Kraven might be able to kill him. The answer shocks the zombie man. Consumed by rage, he decides to attack, hoping to finish him in one blow. In response, the young hero remains completely emotionless. Faced with the boy's coldness, the villain freezes, unable to react. And with a new strike forming, the boy declares that if he wasn't Kraven, then he shouldn't be in his way. The blow generates a massive pressure around them, and when it hits the zombie man, it splits him into pieces, defeating him completely. The villain's weapon falls to the ground along with his shattered body. The prisoner on the floor asks in fear what was going on. Faced with the scene, he tries to understand how that boy fought off so many zombie men all at once. Showing no emotion, the young hero stares at him in silence. Quickly, the prisoner, gripped by fear, begins to panic. The thought of being the next target fills his mind. Calmly, our hero removes the tape from his mouth. He approaches politely, apologizing and asking for information. With the drawing in hand, he asks if he knows where to find Kraven. Not knowing what to say, the young prisoner remains frightened. Looking at the floor, he spots the fallen weapon of the leader along with part of his hand, and tells the boy that the one he just defeated was Kraven himself. With a thoughtful gaze, the boy reflects on having failed once again in his search. Without saying a word, he decides to leave the place. But the prisoner impulsively calls him back. Discreetly, the boy turns and stares at him. Not knowing what to say, the prisoner hesitates before him. Still kneeling and bound to the ground, he says he doesn't want anything and simply thanks him for being saved. With simplicity, the boy accepts the gratitude and walks away. The prisoner watches his departure in silence, and soon begins to reflect on what he would do from that point on. A strong wind stirs up dust on the ground as the boy leaves the place. And with a big leap, he leaves the top floor and walks along the streets once more. With his notebook in hand, he crosses out Kraven's drawing and decides to jot down some notes. The hero remembers that many years ago, the world fell into ruin due to a zombie virus. Some survived, but many turned into zombie men. These monsters were formed from the fusion of zombies and humans. After the incident, civilization was destroyed, and our young hero, even though he remained human, became immortal. At the end of his journey, the boy finds a gravestone. Standing before it, the young man faces his reality saddened. He laments and asks his mother for forgiveness, the one who had been buried there. He kneels down and says he failed, because he couldn't end his life that day. After being left behind, the prisoner thinks the hero could have at least set him free, and he quickly realizes that someone has appeared, calling him by name Mr. Cuva. The man sees his leader and his partner Dongo. They approach the prisoner and question why he hadn't answered the radio calls. He apologizes and explains that he thought Kraven wouldn't be there, but ended up being captured. Dongo sees Kraven's severed hand lying on the ground. The man looks around and sees all the bodies of the zombie men, asking what had happened. Kyuha explains that everything happened after a young student showed up. His partner, in disbelief, questions how a child could have appeared and defeated everyone. The prisoner, while being untied, says it sounds insane, but in an instant he wiped them all out. Dongo asks if the man knows where the boy might be now, but Kyuha regrets not knowing, saying he wished he had asked. He recalls the boy's cold and emotionless stare, and says he didn't ask him anything because he was afraid, and his friend asked if he was a zombie man. But the prisoner laments, and the leader remains thoughtful about the whole situation. The woman reaches toward the ground and quickly notices something important. She asks if the boy was wearing sneakers during the battle. Worried, the prisoner confirms. The leader thinks for a moment while looking for more clues. Meanwhile, our young hero is still staring at his mother's gravestone, and is being watched from afar. Hidden, Kyuha and his friends spy on the boy in the middle of the forest. The woman wonders why he's been standing there for so long. Sweating nervously, the man confirms that this is the boy who saved him. The young hero notices the presence of the adult, and suddenly, their leader decides to strike the boy, but he quickly dodges the attack. The boy looks on, not understanding the situation, but shows no concern. The woman is amazed by the boy's skill and says she truly wanted to defeat him. Her friends, still behind the trees, are horrified. She closely watches the boy's reaction and soon notices a cut on his neck caused by her attack. The boy comments that he's always one step ahead, and then his head detaches from his body. He throws it into the air himself. The leader, alert, decides what to do in that moment. She grabs her weapon and shoots at the head flying through the air. The boy, still standing, extends one of his hands. He reaches toward his own neck for something and pulls out a new head in its place, leaving the woman stunned. Still shocked, the leader is pleased to discover that everything was real. The boy stares at her while she's amazed by his immortality. He sits down on the ground and politely asks her not to disturb him and to leave. She looks at him, unconvinced, and shoots him again with her weapon. She turns quickly and hits the young hero with a powerful kick. The blow launches him far into the forest. With her weapon, the leader fires multiple shots toward the boy. Our hero sees the bullets coming at him. He extends one hand to defend himself and uses one of his abilities, deflecting all the bullets that would have hit him. The woman grows concerned and wonders what kind of power that is. The boy is impressed by how skilled the woman is and says he'll enjoy himself until he defeats her. While preparing for his next strike, she laughs and thanks him for the backhanded compliment. She observes the boy's power around her and is subtly pleased to see that he had surrounded her without her noticing. He pulls back the attack and says he doesn't like to take human lives, asking once more for them to leave. But relentless, she prepares to strike him again. She extended a knife toward the boy's neck and curiously asks how long it takes for him to heal. The boy is surprised by the woman's curiosity. While she stares at him, she points out that his wound on the neck is still open. He pauses to check as she points to it, and when he touches it, he realizes the wound is still open. His eyes go wide in surprise. In disbelief, he realizes that had never happened before. He turns to the woman and asks what she did. The leader finally introduces herself to the boy. She is the captain of the Lethal Force unit, Lee Kyung. In shock, he hears her invite him to join her unit, saying he possessed a rare talent, immortality. In the background, Hyuha and Dongo are embarrassed by the situation. She explains that the boy would be rewarded for joining. She says that Kyuha told her the boy's wish was to end his own life. Kyung commits that she could make that wish come true. Disbelieving, the immortal boy doesn't understand the proposal, and Leader Lee explains that a scientist in her unit had the ability to do so. Frustrated, he asks how that would be possible. Without a clear answer, she says the boy should ask the scientist directly. She emphasizes that the knife that wounded him was created by the same scientist. The hero thinks a bit about the proposal, and from the boy's reaction, she deduces it was the first time a wound of his hadn't healed. As he reflects, she asks him if he wasn't curious to know how it worked. The boy, hopeful, speaks. In the middle of the forest, he questions if it would really be possible to end his life. Lee is pleased to know the boy considered the proposal and asks his name. He, as if he hadn't said it in a long time, says his name is Mireille. The leader extends her fist with precision, telling him he didn't need to worry. His friends listen to the agreement stunned. Lee says that Mireille would defeat the zombie men with her troops, reclaim Earth, and have his wish granted in the end. Beside his mother's grave, he listens attentively. Thus, the leader, happy, says she hoped to get along with her new companion until then. With serious and hopeful eyes, she stares at him. He asks his new leader to make that a promise. Happy, she agrees. He stretches his neck and feels his still unhealed wound, and for the first time in a long while, he feels happy knowing his wish might be fulfilled. As the conversation ends, the leader grabs her radio and asks if Garam could hear her. Everyone on the team hears the confirmation on the other end, and they tell her she's almost there. Satisfied, Lee says she hopes she arrives soon, and after the girl mentions a problem with the accelerator, her friends wonder if she even had a driver's license. The leader quickly notices a car approaching in her direction. Garam appears, driving in a panic, and suddenly slams the brakes. Everyone watches her not-so-skillful arrival behind the wheel. The girl opens the car door and arrives full of energy, apologizing for being late. The leader reassures her that it's all fine, and Garam is shocked to see the new group member. Mireille observes her as she asks who he is. Lee says, in front of everyone, that the new recruit would be under Garam's command, and the young woman, excited, asks if she had finally become a senior. Very happy, she welcomes the newcomer and introduces herself. Her name is Jin Garam, but the boy, showing no emotion, ignores her. As he walks toward the car, she assumes the boy must be shy. In the car, the leader informs the boy that he'll be sent on an expedition to Jinhae, a place occupied by the Red Dan group. Our hero, with little information, asks who they were. Lee is surprised by the boy's lack of knowledge, but understands he must have been isolated for a long time. The Red Dan group is one of the most famous, having conquered entire cities. She points out that her objective was to eliminate them, but first needed to locate their leader. Dongno and Kyuha add that they went after Kraven because he was once a member of the Red Dan. Mireille understands, but the men quickly realize he doesn't seem very interested. Lee highlights that in Jinhae, there's a paladin from the group who should know the location of their boss. While reading a book, Garam hears that she and the boy would go in search of clues about the Red Dan leader's whereabouts. She also points out that while Craven commanded a group, the paladin could command an entire city. The leader laments that they couldn't all go together since they had to search in different places. And soon they spot a ruined city, Jinhei, Changwon. Mirai and Garam step out of the car. The leader says goodbye, heading toward her destination. Young Garam feels confident in her mission and in sharing the details with the young hero. The group continues in their car, and Lee wishes the two youngsters good luck and to be careful. Confident, Garam is happy about her first mission as a senior, though a little nervous. The young woman begins to run toward the city and hopes the boy follows her. The two youths walk through the destroyed city. Garam is satisfied that they entered the city safely. However nervous, she hides behind a car trying to calm herself. She holds a book and realizes that Jinhei is the city of different species, since it was possible to find various different species there. It wasn't a normal city, there were also animal-type zombies. She observes carefully, unsure where they could appear from. From afar, the youths are being watched through binoculars. Kyuva asks the leader if they'll be alright and says he thinks it would be better if everyone went together. Lee says it's not necessary, since it wouldn't be that dangerous with Mirai's help. Meanwhile, she adds that she also needed to check if the boy would follow her orders. With sharp eyes, she says he's talented, but she doesn't know what he might be planning. Together with her companions, she says she'd like to watch him a little longer. Kyuva listens to her nervously. In the city, Garam is feeling quite anxious. Desperate as she sees her partner so calm, she tells him to hide too. Shocked, she doesn't understand his lack of concern and says zombies could appear at any moment. Suddenly, two zombie animals pass nearby, talking to each other. The girl quickly hides in worry, afraid. She questions what kind of zombie species those were. The monsters talk about Craven's death, and soon they run into Mirai, standing still and unfazed by the situation. His partner panics. From a distance, Leader Lee observes the scene. In the middle of the city, the hero is surrounded by some of the monsters staring at him. Lee becomes worried, as she forgot to tell the boy he shouldn't get caught. The zombie tiger asks what the human is doing there. Garam questions the boy's sanity and doesn't understand why he didn't hide. She starts to panic. Calmly and politely, the boy tells her that he's going to face them all right now. Shocked, the girl is frozen in place. The boy raises his hands to use his power, and then a giant brain-shaped sphere forms in his hands, lifting him into the air. Once he reaches a significant height, the boy throws it forcefully at his opponents. Massive destruction follows in the middle of the city. His partner, terrified, asks what's going on. When the girl sees the scene, she realizes she was wrong to think he was just a normal boy. Mirai walks toward the villains. The zombie animals begin to question what he could be, if not human. Facing his enemies, the boy prepares for his next attack. With force, he strikes them using his whip-like power, cutting them apart. Garam is startled by the loud noise. The young hero prepares for another powerful attack. With great strength, he launches another giant brain, causing massive destruction. But as he turns toward the street, he quickly notices several explosions were triggered because of it. From afar, his teammates wonder what's happening. He's in disbelief as he never imagined something like that could happen. From a distance, other zombie animals grow worried due to all the noise. They then decide to investigate the source of the explosion. The zombie animals run toward the battle while those already there flee. When the new villains arrive, they see the young boy delivering a massive punch to the ground. Creating a huge fissure, he hits them and sends them flying into the air. A group of monsters runs into the young Garam on the street. Worried, she realizes she'll have to fight too. A zombie cat asks if she was the one causing all that chaos. Suddenly, the young girl grabs a book and starts analyzing. Furious, she crouches down, and a huge green energy surrounds her. With the book in hand, she casts her spell. This way, the girl activates her ability, Thunder Collapse, and in an instant, she strikes down 3 zombie animals with a single blow, defeating them. With this battle, the ruined city was becoming even more destroyed. Our hero leaps forward in front of his enemies, and with a strong kick, hits them in the head. As a result, the zombie animals are sent flying. Mirai looks at the street and picks his next target. 3 massive explosions erupt. Exhausted and breathless, the young Garam finds her partner for the first time after the battle. Furious, she says that if the boy intended to destroy the whole city, he was only attracting more zombies there. Mirai gets ready, as a zombie monster has fallen to the ground, but is still alive. Terrified, the monster tries to say something but can't. Confused, the boy asks what happened to him and why he couldn't speak properly. His companion asks why he's worried about this one after defeating all the others. He listens closely as the girl explains that this one is of a lower class. This brings back a memory to the boy of his mother when she couldn't speak to him on her deathbed. He stares at the monster with a melancholic look, and then orders it to disappear from there as soon as possible. Terrified, the zombie flees and the girl, outraged, asks why he let it escape. But both are caught off guard by the presence of other zombie animals hunting them. Furious, Garam casts another spell, determined to defeat her enemies. During the battle, the ruined city was still lit by daylight. But in just a moment, the darkness of night took over the area. Exhausted, the girl was breathless. In the streets surrounded by fallen monsters, she asks if, for a moment, they had stopped appearing. As he observes the defeated zombies, he asks the girl which one of them was supposed to be the paladin, and she said that in that situation, the paladin should have been defeated as well. But then she thinks that maybe he hadn't shown up yet. She starts looking at the ground, wondering if he had even come to the battle. Tired, she turns to the boy and says they should hide for a while. They needed to hide, she says, since other monsters could still show up. Simply, he says they would just have to defeat them again, and that the paladin must still be among them. Garam reminds him that the goal of the mission was investigation, not fighting everyone, but the young man suggests they could investigate while fighting. The girl looks at him thoughtfully, analyzing the idea. Impatient, she says that even if he was very powerful, they couldn't spend the entire day fighting. She says that he didn't need to worry about dying, but she did. She couldn't afford to die for real. He stares at the ground, thoughtful. He says it didn't matter whether she lived or not. What mattered was completing the mission, and with that, she becomes furious upon hearing the boy's way of thinking. Angrily, she asks how he could think that way. She reminds him that the reason they were there was to save lives. She makes him remember that no matter how important the mission is, saving lives should always come first. Then she tells him he shouldn't say things like that so lightly. To the girl's surprise, the boy steps closer, wanting to tell her something. But subtly, he says that he didn't think the same way as she did. The girl is surprised and starts to sweat coldly. To the surprise of both, a huge monster stomps the ground with force. A large zombie monster, strong and armed, is there, wanting to know what's going on. His body is covered in blades, and he has a lemur mask strapped to his back. When the two youths see him, there's no doubt that he's the paladin. From a distance, Leader Lee watches them through binoculars. Garam, worried, laments that the monster showed up at a time when she no longer had the strength to fight, and looking at all those ZOMGANs and the paladin, would she really have the strength to defeat them? The large zombie says he started investigating after learning that his younger brother, Craven, had been defeated. One of his men recognizes Murray. He tells the paladin that it was this boy who fought Craven. The paladin looks at him and asks if the mountaineer was sure about that. He says that he was the one who defeated Craven and all of his team. The paladin becomes furious upon hearing that. Preparing to fight, he says he had heard rumors about humans with special abilities, known as transcenders. He spins the blades on his back, forming a rotor. Enraged, he says the boy would not survive after harming his family. From afar, his teammates watch, and Leader Lee says she didn't expect this and that they should help them. She then runs and calls her companions to go assist them. Our young hero decides he will face the powerful paladin. However, Garam grabs his arm and questions his sanity. She warns him, saying that he was the leader of the Crimson Gang. What would happen if they ran away? Worried, she warns that no matter how strong the opponent, he really could be defeated. He looks thoughtful before making a decision. He releases his arm and, to his companion's surprise, says it wouldn't be such a bad thing if that happened. With that, the paladin charges furiously toward the boy, intent on attacking him. The young man standing in the middle of the street doesn't react much, while Garam grows enraged with concern. A loud crash echoes through the street as the villain stomps the ground. They come face to face with the young hero, ready for battle. The paladin prepares a powerful blow. Likewise, the young boy, surrounded by the last of the zombies, prepares to fight as well. With his first attack, he defeats all the zombie animals around him. A single strike leaves the paladin surprised, in shock. One of his zombie soldiers calls out to him, but overwhelmed with rage, he can only focus his attention on the boy. The paladin then prepares for his next strike, even more enraged after seeing his family defeated in front of him. There he was, the young hero, standing in the middle of the destroyed street, waiting for his opponent's next attack. A monstrous paladin surrounds him, striking quickly with his blades. He looks pleased, convinced he'll slice the boy into pieces and defeat him easily. He watches the boy being cut apart and says that's what happens when someone foolishly faces him. For a brief moment, the young hero reflects on the possibility of being defeated. The powerful paladin strikes again, and once more, the boy is split into pieces. Garam is horrified watching the scene unfold. This way, the young hero's head flies through the air. Then the villain looks at the boy and says he's just prey who doesn't know his place. But quickly, our hero's body reconstructs and attacks the villain by surprise. Not understanding what's happening, the monster grows furious. The paladin looks at him, thinking he was sure he felt his blades pass through. Now just as powerful as before, Murray reveals that he is immortal. Stunned, the monster can't react. He backs away, putting distance between himself and the boy. His leg trembles as it touches the ground. In desperation, he puts his hands on his head and wonders how he could be feeling fear of that. As he watches, the boy walks toward him. His young companion, confused, questions what is happening. But determined to win, the paladin prepares for the next strike. He begins running in circles around the boy. Meanwhile, he says the boy is nothing more than a human and won't be able to keep up with his speed. In the ruined city street, a massive tornado begins to form. Mirai, in the middle of the whirlwind, hears the villain say he'll pay the price for hurting his family. But the boy looks at him with disdain and questions whether that really was family. The villain then decides to flee. Desperate, he runs, accepting that he can't win the battle. Running through the street, he concludes that he must warn the boss and gather the other paladins. But suddenly, something jumps out of the tornado. The young hero leaps and catches up to the villain. He hits him from above, striking his back. With a powerful blow, he launches him into the air. The boy begins to reflect on the idea of family, one that he once had. He hits the villain even harder, paralyzing him. The young boy then remembers moments with his mother when she asked if the food they ate was good. In the memory, the boy was happy because it was delicious, and his mother was happy to hear that. But the memory quickly shifts to the tragic moment when she was no longer the same. His mother had become another zombie and tried to attack him. As a result, he was forced to defeat her with his own hands. That's how he saw his only family destroyed in an instant. A memory that haunted and traumatized the boy from a very young age. In the street, the boy is still there, reflecting and striking the monstrous villain. Paralyzed by the attack, the villain cries in despair. Mirai reveals to him that he too is doing all this for his family. In just seconds, he slices the paladin into pieces while still in midair. Garan watched everything, stunned and speechless. Meanwhile, her team, who had been running to help, finally arrives. Everyone watches the young hero in the middle of the street, staring at the destruction he caused. The group leader watches him closely. He looks back and says that it was already enough. The mission was over. She says that, in fact, it was supposed to be an investigation, but he destroyed the entire area. She says they can't continue the investigation this way, and that they should return to base. As they leave the area, the young boy is still deeply saddened and melancholic. While running, Lee reflects on the boy's actions. She knew the ZOMGANs were their enemies, but given the boy's cruelty, there was something more. She observes him and decides to believe that, if he is human, there must be humanity in him, even if she can't see it. Confused by the situation, she thinks she never imagined she feels sorry for monsters until that moment. And for a moment, she finds herself worried about what she had recruited. Could Mirai be more monstrous than the ZOMGANs? Lee then orders everyone to follow her back to the base. After leaving the destroyed city, someone was investigating for clues. A zombie woman says she could only sense the blood of ZOMGANs, with no sign of any humans. Her leader, who accompanied her, gets truly irritated, since now even humans were starting to cause problems. She says it seemed like it hadn't been long since the humans had left the place. She asks the boss if she should notify the other executives, but her leader is confused. In fact, what he wanted was to find them himself and wipe them out. He listens carefully and agrees with the plan. The two leave the city, running after the humans they were hunting. Meanwhile, a campfire was lit. The team gathered around the fire to warm up, as it was already late. Everyone joined to eat and rest. Lee grows concerned as she notices everyone seems a little down. Thoughtfully, she concludes the mission was a failure, that the city had been destroyed, and she didn't know how the monsters would retaliate. She observes her anxious team, and also looks at Mirai with concern, since her most powerful asset had now become a problem. The leader keeps thinking. She then decides to tell the boy that she had been testing him. She admits she wanted to see whether or not she could trust him. The boy listens closely as she says the mission was actually an investigation, but all he did was destroy the place. Garam was there and heard her say she had been dragged into the fight against her will and could have been hurt. She says, still tense, that luckily he managed to defeat the paladin. But as she looks at everyone around the fire, she concludes that with just one slip-up, they could all be dead. And so she concludes that because of that, she couldn't trust the boy. He listens thoughtful. He replies that according to her, he was supposed to take down the ZOMGANs, and that he had followed her orders. And she agrees with him on that point. She extends her hand with precision, and then slams it down hard beside her, saying that her goal was to defeat them and rebuild human society. But she adds that if they just defeat them without a plan, all the humans would end up dead too. Mirai agrees with his captain's distrust, and the leader is pleased with the conversation. She then starts to think that, at the very least, it should have been enough. But now she's worried about something else. They had devastated a city and 2 ZOMGANs. On top of that, they took the life of one of their paladins, meaning there's no doubt the other executives would mobilize and treat this as a declaration of war. Meanwhile, the leader of the zombie men and his companion run, still hunting. And once again, they believe they have found the location. They spot another cave lit by a campfire. The zombie leader asks his partner, Yeru, if they were in the right place. After the young woman confirms, he becomes determined to catch them. And so they head toward the lit cave. The villain enters furiously, ready for revenge. And once again, upon entering the cave, he is surprised to find it empty. The villain and Yeru are frozen in place without a reaction. He places a hand on his head in disbelief. The girl says they masked their scent with food, making it hard to track them. She also concludes that there must be someone smart among them. The zombie regrets not being able to handle the situation alone, so he would have to call a meeting with the other executives. Back on the road, the team's car was speeding toward their base. Lee watches the road and notices that a rebellion had started. They arrive at a large city called Busan. They drive the car at high speed down the road. The leader observes the young boy, deep in thought. On the streets of Busan, humans can be seen working forcibly for the ZOMGANs. She says that in the past it was a pleasant area, but now the monsters had taken over. She adds that the humans there were either their slaves or would be devoured by them. Observing the humans on the street, she says neither option should be the way humans live. Mirai listens, but has nothing to say. On the road, their car speeds by, and one of the monsters orders them to stop, but a sticker on the back of their car says slaves, so the monsters believe they're transporting something for labor. The disguise works, and the zombies let them pass, since they had to worry about the humans who caused the incident in Jinhae. After leaving the car, they follow a path through a sewage tunnel. The leader says it's unpleasant, but it's the only way into the headquarters. As they walk along the subway line, she says it's the headquarters of the Eradication Front. As she spoke, a woman suddenly interrupted her with a shout. Nuri Chien, the commander, demanded to know what had been done. She said the mission was supposed to be an investigation, so what exactly had happened? Awkward and nervously laughing, Lee said she'd explain the details later. She said there was something she needed to do first. Anote, confused, tried to understand what was going on. The leader then called for Mirai. At that moment, everyone turned to watch the boy and his leader standing face to face. Nuri then asked who that boy was. Lee decided to tell the boy that from that moment forward, they would be confronting all the executives at some point. She emphasized that she didn't know how many there would be or how powerful they might be. She said the only executives she knew were the paladins, and they were the weakest of them all. Her companions were surprised when they heard her asking him to attack. He listened without reacting, as she said she was serious and that he shouldn't hold back this time. He asked if that was really an order. With precision, she said yes. QS started to wonder if there was something else she wanted to test, and by observing, he concluded that they had fought before. But back then, she hadn't used her ability, which meant that's what she wanted to confirm. She wanted to see if Mirai could beat her while she was using her ability. As she prepared for the battle, the leader remembered the boy's strength, meaning that all the upcoming missions would probably involve him, but first she had to trust that he could defeat the executives. Then, a massive power burst out around the boy. They jumped toward her to attack, and Lee braced herself for the strike he was about to deliver. Kua grew worried, since the leader was the strongest member of the team. It was discovered that some humans have the potential to become transcendent, becoming as powerful as the ZOMGANs. In her unit, besides Garam and Kyuha, the captain was the strongest, having trained in different martial arts and having abilities far beyond other humans. Ready for battle, the young hero ran toward his leader. At that moment, she prepared herself, activating her ability, Absolute Vision. The boy tried to strike her, but she dodged quickly. He looked on, slightly surprised. Her ability allowed her to calculate every possibility within her field of vision. After dodging his attack, she expected more from the boy. She struck back, landing a powerful punch on him. Then she prepared for another attack, and brutally she hit the boy again. The blow sent him flying. Even so, the young man tried to stabilize himself to continue the fight. Kyuha thought that if he could defeat the captain, that would mean he was the strongest human. Mirai decided to come up with a plan. Lee concluded that at that point, he would probably have to go all out. He positioned himself to use one of his abilities. He launched hundreds of bones at his leader, aiming to hit her. Seeing the attack, she concluded that he could use brains, arteries, veins. Many different attacks were at his disposal. Her ability gave her a special perspective to analyze the possibilities. She observed the bones flying toward her, 9 in total, traveling at an average speed of 70 km/a. And in that case, she braced herself. With absurd speed, she caught each of the bones one after the other without injury. Her teammates, watching, were amazed. She then crushed the bones she was holding. The young hero quickly rushed to attack her again. She swiftly dodged a kick he was aiming at her. He landed on his knees on the ground. He ran toward Lee to strike again. This time, he unleashed a flurry of punches and tried to hit her. She watched, impressed by the power. His first attack was nothing compared to this. She thought her ability allowed her to dodge bullets, but the boy's attack was even faster than bullets. As she dodged the boy's strikes, she realized he was more skilled than she had expected. The boy extended his hand, trying to hit her with another punch. But she dodged again with incredible speed, and in a way she was pleased to see he had completely exceeded her expectations, and so the young hero prepared to strike her once more. However, she ordered him to stop and told him he had won. He was surprised, and she said it had already been enough. Apathetic, he simply agreed. His teammates watched in disbelief. Garam was shocked to realize that her captain hadn't even managed to counterattack. Everyone observed them, and although the battle had been short, it gave them new hope. In that moment, there was hope that they could actually defeat the executives. Now they dreamed of the possibility of a new world. More than that, They were even more confident. Lee, satisfied, said they could begin preparations, but no one knew what exactly they were preparing for. Searle grows thoughtful after the battle. He extends his hand and thinks he wasn't able to land a single hit on her. He watches, still talking with Nuri, while reflecting. Nuri asks the leader what she was thinking about, but she quickly gets worried, already imagining what it might be. The woman looks at Murray and asks if he was the reason security had increased. Nuri concludes that Lee found a really strong guy and recruited him without thinking too much. He destroyed a place along the way. Awkward and with not much to say, she jokes that Nuri was really smart. The leader then decides to explain once and for all that the situation had become more complicated than she expected, and she explains that the plan now was to go to Auric Island. Nuri asks if by Auric Island she actually meant the island of human slaves. Lee explains that a battle would begin soon and that they needed some weapons, and she adds that they had to bring back Jun as soon as possible, the scientist who had gone there to investigate. Worried, Nuri asks if she intended to go after her right now. The leader confirms and says that even if they didn't need weapons, they would still need her. She holds out the knife the scientist had made, reinforcing Jun's importance. Lee tells Nuri about the promise she made to the young hero before he joined them. Nuri, outraged, asks if that was really what he wanted. Lee confirms, but admits she doesn't know the exact reason. Commander Nuri is surprised to learn that the boy is immortal. She says the knife wouldn't be enough to take the boy's life, so they needed to see the scientist again as soon as possible. Nuri concludes that the leader should go, whether she liked it or not. She throws the knife aside to start working on a plan. The commander looks over the documents, thinking more about Auric Island. Nuri calls everyone to pay attention to the summary of the new mission. First, bring Jun back, and then recruit some useful people for the cause. She explains that all members of the Eradication Front were gathered there, and that would be a portion of the people for future actions. She also makes it clear that even with the other members elsewhere, the number of people would still be very low. In short, the mission would involve securing and recruiting more members for the team. Lee is happy to see that everything was already planned, and that no one was smarter than Nuri. Kyuva asks the commander if they'd be using a boat, and what they would do about the ZOMGANs at the port. Nuri doesn't understand the question. A man wants to know how to deal with the situation before. The woman explains that everyone knew the number of monsters wouldn't be a problem. After that, at the port, Murray makes a big leap in front of some containers. The young boy listens carefully through his earpiece to instructions on eliminating any nearby ZOMGANs. Thus, at Busan Port, the youths would face the monsters quickly and quietly. The team organizes and splits up to search for a boat carefully. Meanwhile, something was happening in City L in Busan. The meeting between the executives of the Simpson gang, the 7 Supreme Guards, had begun. One of the Supremes tells the others that the humans had destroyed Jinha. In addition, the 7th Paladin had also been defeated, and they were unable to locate them after tracking them. Supreme number 4, Nate Fisi, questions whether it really had been humans who caused this. Number 5, Yeru says the area was contaminated with their stench. Number 3, Arlo, concludes that if a Paladin had been defeated, then a Transcendent was involved. Number 2, Spadus doesn't understand the others' concern, since they were just humans. Number 1, Terate asks if Rishul had any more detailed information, but he says no. Terate says they should block the cities and reinforce security, but that without enough information, they wouldn't make rash decisions. He also orders Rishul to capture the humans, and emphasizes that they must not escape this time, since it wasn't the first time he ignored the man's lazy behavior. The monster then confirms if his mission was simply to capture them. Uriur asks her partner where he would search first. He says that first he would look within his own territory. At Busan Port, Murray follows orders. Lee says that there should be some humans working in that area, and they must not be harmed. The young hero finds the monsters and runs to attack them. However, as he approaches, he remembers he should take them down silently. He watches them carefully while they talk, and quickly with a strike, he hits them in the head. He kneels to the ground after defeating them, and runs off to find the next ones, reinforcing in his mind that he should do all of this silently. Meanwhile, his companions were also dealing with other ZOMGANs. Donho and Garam were searching for a boat. Unfortunately, neither of them had any luck, so they decided to search elsewhere. But soon, they sensed monsters approaching. Suddenly, our young hero appeared and quickly defeated them. Murray continued his mission to take them down. His teammates could now search for the boat without trouble. They ran between the containers in another direction. Meanwhile, Kyuho was worried about where the others were and felt lost. He heard a scream and was startled. He began to look around, trying to figure out where the woman's voice had come from. A slave had been kidnapped by 2 zombies who planned to devour her. The woman cried in desperation, not knowing what to do. The zombie men talked among themselves, pleased about the meal they were about to have, and complained about their food rations being cut. One of the zombies mentioned that they were only allowed to eat human flesh once a month, but the executives always filled their stomachs, so their option was to break the rules. Meanwhile, the woman screamed at them to stay away. A child appeared in front of her, demanding that they leave his mother alone. The woman, desperate, told the boy that she had told him not to follow her to work. One of the monsters laughed at the boy's sudden appearance. Laughing, he said that, unfortunately, they didn't eat children and that he should just contribute to the labor force. Kyuha then discovered where the screams were coming from. He looked at the scene in shock as the young boy tried to defend his mother. He rushed in, unable to believe what was happening. The woman cried in the corner, desperate. The zombie man grew irritated at the arrival of even more people, complaining that humans kept interfering. The child begged Kyuha to save his mother. Kyuha then felt concerned because he had acted on impulse, but he wasn't good at fighting. The zombies were pleased to see more humans, saying it would only satisfy them further. Kyuha was hit with a punch in the stomach. Unfortunately, the zombie man grabbed him by the face. The child cried as he watched the man trapped. The zombies then prepared to strike him. They tightened their grip on Kyuha's head, harder and harder. But to everyone's surprise, the head of the zombie attacking him suddenly exploded. Kyuha fell hard to the ground. The other zombies, not understanding what was happening, were outraged. Mirai then appeared, holding a brain-shaped sphere between his fingers, ready to attack again. And when the zombie tried to ask who the boy was, he was struck in the head too, and defeated. The boy Chan smiled and hugged his mother, who had now been saved. Kyuha thanked the hero for saving his life. Mother and son cried together, emotional and shaken. Our young hero watched the scene intently and reflected on what that meant to him. His friend called out to him. The woman thanked Kyuha for saving her life, but he said he hadn't done anything and asked her to go home. With deep gratitude, she thanked the man several times. Kyuha watched the young boy walk away from the scene. Mirai walked slowly through the corridors, continuing his mission. The man thought about what had just happened, and when he looked at the hero, he wondered why he now looked so sad. He was surprised by a voice on his radio, saying they had found a boat. Everyone gathered at the boat the captain had located. Lee looked at Dongho and asked what he was holding. He said he had found clothes the ZOMGANs used to work at the port and didn't ignore them. While they were on the boat, they found some bodies but ignored them because they needed to leave quickly. They followed the route they had planned to reach their destination. Garam, with the manual in hand, tried to figure out how the boat worked. Outside, Mirai was getting fresh air, deep in thought. Kyuha went to meet the boy. The man called the young boy over for a conversation. He said that he too was a transcendent, and his ability was true manipulation. He explained that he could change the way people feel just by talking to them. He decided to demonstrate, activating his true hypnosis ability. He cast his ability in the boy's direction, but to the man's surprise, no effect was caused on our hero. Looking at Mirai, he was stunned to realize that his ability was blocked due to the boy's extremely low mood. Kyuha was completely stunned and began to question just how sad the boy truly was. He didn't really know what to say to comfort him. So from then on, he said that if anything disturbing or troubling ever happened to him, the boy could talk to him anytime. The boy, still with a saddened look, listened as his friend told him that his job there was like that of a psychologist. But that conversation didn't change the fact that the boy's sadness remained deep. Kyuha hears a thank you, but in truth had been hoping for a conversation. A man told her not to worry, that he could talk anytime. Dongho tells the man that he's amazing for at least trying. As they watch, he also asks if he wasn't afraid of the boy. Dongho says the boy seems to have no emotions, looks dangerous, and that it's frightening he wants to lose his own life. Kyuha reflects on his point of view. In fact, he thinks Mirai just seems sad. He also says it's like he's searching for a reason to live, rather than really wanting to die. Inside the cabin, Garam becomes a little desperate beside her leader. In front of the boat, a massive ship approaches. Inside the ship, a radio reports that bodies have been found at Busan port and nearby vessels should be investigated. Zombie SS Fader announces he spotted a suspicious fishing boat and that he'd approach it immediately. Ritual then appears and asks the man what was happening. They explain they spotted a suspicious boat ahead. The captain explains that it didn't seem to be the same fishing boat from the report they were going to investigate, but his leader doesn't give it much importance. The ship then orders the fishing boat to stop. If they didn't cooperate, they'd open fire. Garam, worried, asks her leader what they should do, since the plan was to go unnoticed. Lee thinks they were close to their destination and didn't want to fight. It couldn't repeat the mistake of Jinha. Dongho, desperate, asks the captain if he should alert Mirai about the ZOMGAN ship. Lee has no answers, but quickly comes up with a plan. She instructs her teammate to wear the clothes of the ZOMGANs they had stolen. Dongho and Garam put on the outfits as disguises, speak with the ship's captain, and pretend they're transporting human slaves. Nervously, they confirm the story that they were taking them to Auriok Island. The captain says it was odd since no boats were supposed to be operating that day. Nervously, Dongho says they were additional workers. Luckily for them, the captain says these things happen from time to time. Relieved, Dongho sweats from sheer anxiety. However, the captain gets suspicious and asks why they were the ones transporting the humans. He adds that normally, it's ZOMGANs who do that job, not humans. Kyuha, seeing the situation, panics, but Lee reassures him she trusted Dongho. Still, Dongho was desperate, trying to come up with a good answer. Sweating cold, he kept thinking he needed to pull himself together. He clenched his fist, thinking he had always been prepared for these situations. He remembers that before all this, his dream was to be an actor, a talented and well-respected actor, and the best answer he could come up with was to say that Cheol-soo Kim had sent them. Desperate, Garan wonders who that man even is. In his head, Dongho thinks that at least someone out there must be named Cheol-soo. Kyuva panics, thinking the answer wouldn't be good enough. The ship's captain asks if Cheol-soo really sent them. As the monster stares, the man starts to worry whether anyone with that name even worked there. But to everyone's surprise, the captain is unsure if Cheol-soo still works there. The captain laughs, saying that apparently Cheol-soo was still making trouble since he hated sending reports. Dongho gets emotional from the incredible stroke of luck. Mireille, watching the scene from afar, starts to wonder if they couldn't just fight the man and move on. Suddenly, everyone's conversation is interrupted. Rishul appears on the vessel and asks why they were taking so long. Lee watches the scene with focus and concern. The ship's captain explains it was nothing serious and that the humans were under Cheol-soo's command. The leader notices that the ZOMGAN who had appeared was a bit different. The ship's captain then speaks up and says the humans should show more respect. Lee quickly realizes that this is Rishul, an executive. He was a senior ZOMGAN responsible for Auric Island. Rishul observes them closely. He approaches Mireille, trying to figure something out. And looking at the boy, he asks if they had met before. Leader Lee grows concerned at the question. However, Rishul believes it was a mistake and decides to leave. Once the zombies move away, Lee decides to speak discreetly with the young hero. She watches Rishul leaving and tells the boy to remember his face. After all, it wouldn't be long before they had to fight him. Upon arriving at Auric Island, they're quickly met with the sight of the human slave farm. The guards at the entrance welcome Rishul, who is followed by Mireille and his team. One of the guards asked the ship captain who those people were, and he explained that they were additional workers. The captain then dismissed Garam and Dongho. Lee ordered Dongho to find a boat for when they were ready to leave. Worried and a bit confused, Dongho heard fishing rod, but Garam corrected him and said it was boat. The young woman explained to him that they would search for a boat while Lee would look for the scientist Jian. Thus, upon entering the slave farm, the guard escorting them separated the prisoners. Lee carefully observed the human slave farm. Some humans were raised for manual labor, while others for specific functions, and some for the ZOMGAN's entertainment. Thus, the few humans chosen for these purposes were sold to different cities. But Lee reflected that most humans who couldn't become slaves ended up as food, sent to the slaughterhouse. In other words, if you wanted to be chosen as a slave, you had to prove that you were special compared to others. A slave working inside the farm stared at her in the hallway. He bumped hard into her shoulder as he passed. When she saw him leaving, she concluded that in that place, you had to fight to survive, no different from nature. Lee called for Mireille. She told him to protect Kyuha until further instructions. With little choice, the boy simply agreed. She watched attentively and said that, in that place, one had to be more cautious with humans than with ZOMGANs. The guard then separated the boys, leaders, into different cells. As Lee watched them enter the cell, she preferred to believe everything would be alright. While walking to her own cell, she started looking around, searching for Jiun. Mireille and Kyuha, in their room, came across other humans. One of the prisoners asked who they thought they were to be there. Kyuha, slightly cheerful, said they were there to rescue everyone and would explain everything at the right time. But he was quickly shocked by what he had just seen. A large prisoner was holding a woman, his cellmate, by the hair. Startled, Kyuha asked what he was doing. Then he noticed the older man pretending not to care about the conversation. In another corner, a young girl cried in sadness. Soon, Kyuha realized something was wrong. The large prisoner released the woman, throwing her aside. The strong man said that apparently it was their first time there and that he was going to teach them something. Suddenly, he threw a powerful punch into Kyuha's face. The blow sent the boy flying. The prisoner grabbed the boy by the head and said that from that moment on, they would be his slaves. He then said they would do any work assigned and wouldn't tell anyone what they were good at. Outraged, Kyuha repeated that they were there to save them. But the large prisoner chose not to listen and assumed the boy was starting to get it. He extended his hand to strike Kyuha again, but was stopped by our hero. He asked Mireille what she wanted, and politely he turned to his partner, Kyuha. He asked if he could take the man's life. Furious, the prisoner asked if the boy had gone mad, and Kyuha said you should never attack another human. The violent prisoner decided to attack again, and said he wouldn't show mercy just because a child was present. He then threw a punch, aiming for the young hero's face. However, he was surprised and wondered why the boy's head was so hard, and why his hand hurt. Disbelieving, Mireille wondered what was wrong with him. The young boy then decided to fight back, but the prisoner had already backed away. The boy placed his index finger on the prisoner's forehead, then gave a simple flick and sent the man flying. The prisoner crashed into the wall, screaming. The The woman who had been assaulted was shocked. The girl who had been crying was speechless. The man, after the blow, asked himself what had just happened. Hua turned to the young boy and asked if that had really been just a flick, hoping no one had heard it and come to check. But a ZOMGAN entered the cell, furious. Hua panicked, as he hadn't found the scientist and didn't know how to rescue the people, yet a fight was already beginning. The ZOMGAN turned toward the violent prisoner and immediately assumed he was the problem. The ZOMGAN grabbed the man by the collar. He swore it was a misunderstanding and that it wasn't him this time. Furious and out of patience, the guard decided the prisoner needed special treatment. He removed him from the cell, locking the others inside. Hua concludes that he must have already caused a lot of trouble and feels relieved that they got out of the situation. The man also wonders what his special treatment might be in hopes they won't kill him. Hua tells the young man not to feel bad, since the prisoner was the one at fault, but it was Mirai who was speaking. The woman and the young girl look on, shocked and amazed by what happened. Hua was about to apologize for what happened, but the old man quickly kneels, begging for his life. The old prisoner says he can't finish the work in time, and for that, he'll be sent to the slaughterhouse. He begs to survive. The female prisoner says the old man should be ashamed of his plea since there were children present. Hua quickly understands the situation. The woman and the old prisoner argue about him not wanting to become food. The man soon realizes that the prisoners survived by bowing their heads rather than becoming human meat. He quickly reassures them both, saying no one was going to die. And he repeats, impatient, saying they had come to rescue them and would help them escape that place. Meanwhile, in another cell, a prisoner turns to Lee and says smugly that he'd explain how things work. Unbothered, she says he could take over her job, and if needed, she'd find more work for him. She sits in a corner and says she needed to rest. The prisoner dances, happy, and quickly thinks that kind of energy would be necessary, since they'd be out of there soon. Lee begins to think she should search for Jun and then plan their escape. In their cells, a speaker broadcasts the voice of a guard, ordering them to start working in their assigned areas. In Lee's cell, the prisoner dances happily, and she wonders why that voice sounded so familiar. Outside the cell, the day was bright, and they were starting their labor. Hua carries on his back, along with other prisoners, a huge tree trunk, wondering how he ended up with that kind of job. Near him, a guard orders him to work faster, and he just thinks he needs time to find Jiun. He's also curious to know what job Mirai was assigned, but figured it must be more exhausting than his. But Mirai was seated in front of a sewing machine. Another prisoner was explaining how the job worked. The young hero, with no skill at all, runs his own hand through the machine while trying to feed fabric. Desperate, the prisoner tells him to just stand in a corner and not get in the way. The young girl, his cellmate, grows worried about his injury. She offers the boy some bandages she had and proposes to help him. They hold hands and she applies a bunch of bandages, as his wound looked very bad. He looks on without much emotion. He says he didn't need them, but upset, she insists the wound could get infected. Either way, with kindness, she looks at him and asks his name. He replies, Mirayon. Shy, she sits beside him while they talk. Awkwardly, she thanks the boy. Now their cell could get back to work. She says the bald man was taking most of the jobs and that she feared being taken to the slaughterhouse. The woman, also a cellmate, Jizin, calls out to the girl, Heian. The girl, smiling, introduces the woman to the young hero, saying she was a great person. She also says that in the cell, she took care of the girl and had even fought the bald prisoner before. Once again, she thanks the boy, very excited, and blushing deeply, she brings in a little notebook to show what she wrote, that he was very cute. Mirai doesn't understand what's going on. He shows no reaction. Young Heian runs back to work, embarrassed, and the woman very pleased. Jizin sits next to the boy and asks if he expected the madness their cell turned out to be. She says the other cells seemed much worse, probably due to fiercer competition. She explains that even having to deal with the bald prisoner, it was a little better than the other cells, and now better thanks to the hero. The woman says he helped them in many ways and that she was very grateful for that. Mirai, unreactive, stares at her. Unintentionally, she reminds him of his mother. The boy then pulls back while speaking with the woman. Jizin says she was curious to know what was written in his notebook, but the boy ignores her, gets up, and walks away. She wonders if she might have said something wrong. Mirai decides to go back to work, but gets injured again, leaving the other prisoner furious. Outside, Lee hadn't found the scientist. She reflects on that and how she would find Jian. She had already searched everywhere, in the field, the workshop, and even the detention cells. That wasn't a good sign. Had she hidden somewhere? And suddenly she thought Jian wouldn't have left. It would be awful if that had happened. From the speaker, a voice ordered them to stop working and return to their cells. The leader listened to the command with confusion. Once again, Lee tried to figure out why that voice sounded so familiar, and soon realized it was Jian on the microphone. Back in the cell, the leader sees the prisoner pleased with how much he had worked that day and asks him where the announcements were transmitted from. The man said probably from the guard's room, and she immediately became interested in what job she could do in there. He said it would be cleaning the guard's room, but that was his job. He asked when Lee would hand over her tag. She had said she'd give him her job. Not understanding, she said he needed her tag to take over the job she was assigned. Without thinking too much, she struck the man hard in the face, knocking him out. With the prisoner lying on the floor, she stole the tag from his shirt to take over his job. She walked through the corridors in search of the guard's room. Lee spotted a sleeping ZOMGAN beside the door and entered disguised as a cleaner. At that moment, all she hoped for was that her scientist friend was in there too. To her pleasant surprise, there was Jiun, sitting with her hands on her head. Right then, Lee would have never thought she'd become a guard. Seeing her friend, she called out Jiun's name. The guard stared at her, surprised. Realizing it was her captain, she teared up with emotion. Happy and in disbelief, she rushed to her leader and hugged her tightly. The scientist said they caught her while she was investigating, and she started working hard to survive. Lee said she wouldn't have to worry anymore, as they were there to escape. But to the leader's surprise, the scientist said they couldn't. Desperate and afraid, Jiun said there was no way to escape that place. All around them, large bars enclosed the windows. Meanwhile, our hero's cellmate invited them to get to know each other better by writing about their goals. Kyuha was confused, but his young friend seemed very interested. Jizun said that now that they didn't have to worry about the bald prisoner, they could get to know each other better. Meanwhile, Kyuha thought they shouldn't waste time, but it would be a good chance to talk more with Mirai. Excited, the man said he wanted to join, and that his hero friend would like to as well. Jizun invited the old prisoner to participate too. It would be better than sitting around, feeling down. The 5 prisoners together began writing in their notebooks about their goals. The young boy asked his friend what he should write. His companion said to just write whatever came to mind, whatever he wanted to achieve, with a brief explanation. Mirai asked if that was an order, and casually Kyuha agreed. Not knowing what to write, the boy got lost in thought. But soon after, he started jotting things down, and his friend was happy to see him trying. Jizun asked if everyone had finished and told the old man to go first. The elderly prisoner said, hopefully, that he'd like to see his grandchildren. Saddened, he recalled how the world's changes had prevented him from seeing them. Soon, he began to lament that, in addition to not being able to see them, he was also a burden to all the other companions. The woman listened attentively and said it was okay, because everyone understood. She then decided to start talking about her plans, and her young friend was very happy. But to everyone's surprise, she said she'd like to cook a meal. She explained that for years it had been hard to trust any human or ZOMGAN, and she wanted to meet good people and share meals with them. Hearing the prisoner's wishes, Kyuha grew concerned about people being too kind, and knew he needed to make sure he got out of there. When it was Haeun's turn, the young woman said there was someone she wanted to get closer to. As she admitted this, her eyes widened with hope, and then she stared at the young hero and blushed. Embarrassed, she kneeled down, saying she truly wanted to get closer to that person. When it was Kyuha's turn, the man admitted he couldn't think of anything, so he told Mirai to go first. When it was the boy's turn, he stared at the paper without much reaction. His friend watched, wondering what he might have written, considering he had written a lot himself. The boy, in a few words, said sadly that he wished his life would end. The woman who wanted to share a cell with him was in disbelief. He remembered when he was very small, a memory of his mother trying to take his picture. As a child, he remembered being happy watching her. But then he also remembered that, on a cold winter day, he murdered his own mother. He also recalled a day when he was walking with his mother through the streets, and the woman said her son was so dignified he could become president. Happy, the little boy asked if that could really happen, but she quickly said he'd need to be more than just polite. Angry, the child began to get upset, and his mother laughed at the joke, finding it fun to tease such a cute child. But then she began coughing, and her son worried whether she was okay. Still a bit irritated, he asked his mother why she was teasing him, and she said it was just fun. Meanwhile, a man on the phone passed by the two of them. The boy watched as the man said he'd caught a cold and would be home soon. He watched him walk down the street, curious. When they got home, his mother told him to go in first, and that she'd be back once she finished work. As she said goodbye, he wondered why she had started coughing all of a sudden. The young child watched his mother leave, but he knew something was wrong that day. When he saw her again, she was walking down the street, and he had a bad feeling that he'd never see her again. He called out to his mother, eyes full of curiosity. Worried about her, he wanted to go with her. On the streets, as he tried to follow, the woman was working. Mirai was with her, but she seemed a bit impatient at the time. Concerned, she asked if something was wrong and why he was staring. But slightly irritated, he admitted he didn't know the reason. Soon night fell, and since it had been a long time, she asked if the boy wasn't bored from sitting for so long. He said no, she was glad that her son was so good and said she'd close early, and they would leave soon. His mother also said that because he was with her, she was feeling more energetic. While staying with her, he knew it was deep inside himself because he could only hear the voices of a few customers. Still, even if it was tiring, he loved spending time with his mother. Sitting down, he watched his mother serve her customers, and he happily thought that he didn't want that moment to end. While wishing he could freeze that moment in time, he was surprised by his mother coughing, and suddenly she coughed more and more, feeling really sick. Worried, she wondered what was happening. The woman began to lose her strength and slowly collapsed onto the counter. And there, at night, at her workplace, she collapsed in front of her son. The young hero, still a child, worried about his mother, asked what was happening. She tried to reassure him, saying everything was fine, that she was just tired. As she got up, she said it must be just a cold and that they'd leave early so she could rest. The boy looked on, not knowing what to do, as she said she was feeling a bit dizzy. Later, as night fully set in, they arrived home. His mother cooked, chopping a carrot. She sang in the kitchen and her son watched, thinking she seemed to be okay. Relieved, he was glad to see his mother looking a bit better. Sitting at the table, the two of them started to eat dinner. The boy complimented his mother's food, saying it was delicious. His mother looked at him, pleased. She quickly got up and said she needed to get a gift for him. And then, to his surprise, she revealed a new uniform for the boy. She said he always wore old clothes from donations and that she had decided to buy a new school uniform for him. Very excited, he asked his mother if he could try it on. As he put on the clothes, he asked what she thought even though the outfit was a bit big. She said it looked great on him. Very happy, the boy lay down to sleep still wearing the uniform. He said that since it was a gift, he'd sleep in it anyway. The clock on the wall showed that the night was passing quickly. And suddenly, a television announcement warned all residents to evacuate to a safety zone immediately. The television repeated the announcement several times, alerting them. The boy woke up in the middle of the night and asked what the noise was. With the bed soaked in red liquid, he looked around, searching for his mother. Angry and worried, he asked if she was still feeling sick and why everything was so messy. But when she turned to the boy, it was no longer his mother, it was a monster. He stared at her in despair, not knowing what to do. His zombie mother attacked him violently, leaping on top of the boy. She pinned him against the wall or bit him while the boy screamed. Crying and desperate, he asked why his mother would do that to him. The clock on the wall chimed. His mother, now a zombie, still tried to attack. The boy cried out in despair, screaming for his mom. On the floor, pinned beneath the monster, he begged for his life. The clock chimed again, and again, without stopping. And suddenly, the boy woke up startled, screaming. He sat up in bed breathless, not understanding what was happening. He looked around and wondered what had happened. He saw the time on the clock on the wall and questioned whether it had all been a dream. He felt so relieved because he had been terrified and strongly believed it was a nightmare. But when he looked to the side, searching for his mother, the zombie tried to attack him again. He looked back, horrified. She grabbed him and attacked again. The young child started crying again, begging his mother to stop. Trying to push her away, he shoved her hard, throwing her against the wall. Shocked by how strong his blow was, he was confused. Still crying, he looked at his hands and wondered why he was so strong. Standing in his room, he stared at his defeated zombie mother lying on the floor. The boy then ran off, calling for help. Desperate, running through the streets, he wondered what was happening. He began to question if it wasn't a dream since he was still alive. But as he ran, he was stunned by what he saw in the streets. The city was in ruins. When he looked around, other zombies were approaching. Afraid, he hid under a car and asked himself what those things were. From afar, he observed other humans asking themselves what they would do. One adult turned to another and asked him to check if those were real zombies. The boy listened to them questioning if they'd turn into zombies if bitten and got scared by what he was learning. Soon after, 2 more zombies tried to attack him, and so the monsters ran through the city streets. Face to face with a zombie, Mairead covered her mouth so she wouldn't scream. But she couldn't hold it in and quickly ran away, screaming. The monster then decided to attack her as she tried to escape. The zombie threw her to the ground, pinning her between its legs. As she was attacked, the girl cried in desperation and the zombie bit one of her arms. Terrified and panicking, she begged the monster to get away from her. Trying to escape the attack, she hurled the villain far away, tearing her own arm off in the process. She walked through the streets, leaving a trail of dripping red liquid behind her. Desperate, she cried in a corner, not knowing what to do. And so she held her hand over the wound as she waited. But surprisingly, a new arm appeared in its place. The girl then screamed and cried in immense pain. She was back at her house, calling for her mother while looking at the zombie lying nearby. But the monster hadn't been completely defeated and now woke up again. Her zombie mother went after her once more, terrifying her. Desperate, she screamed, not knowing what to do. She begged endlessly for her mother to stop. But the monster didn't listen, didn't think, only wanted to attack her. Crying in fear, all she could say was for the monster to get away from her. And in a sudden burst of rage, she screamed, and a barrage of bone shot from her body toward the monster, attacking it. The zombie was struck once again. Kneeling with her hand on her face, she kept begging but looked at what was happening. Then the zombie said something that surprised her. Shocked, she heard her name. The monster reached out its arm toward her, and her zombie mother hugged her, apologizing. The girl, confused, didn't know what to do. And suddenly, the zombie, alone and without strength, collapsed beside her. After it all happened, the girl remained frozen, kneeling on the ground. She looked at her trembling hands. Her whole body was shaking, and when she realized what had happened, she understood that her mother was gone. At that moment, she was devastated, in shock. She looked once again at the fallen zombie on the floor. For a brief moment, all she wanted was to be wrong, but she knew she wasn't. She laid down beside the zombie, swearing she could hear her mother's fading voice. She knelt on the floor, thinking about what she had done. Desperate, she realized she had taken her own mother's life. Then someone kicked the door open, bursting into the place. A zombie entered the house, wanting to know what had happened. Upon entering the room, he saw a child kneeling. He took the child to the other zombies outside the house. Holding the boy, the villain said the kid had stayed home, and that she would be their dinner. Please, the other villains said they were lucky and wouldn't need to search in another neighborhood. The zombie grabbed the boy's hand, wanting to see his face. When he lifted the child's head, he was surprised to see the boy's eyes open. The villains laughed, thinking he must be terrified. But to their surprise, the young boy asked them to take his life. The zombie men laughed, saying that even if he begged for his life, he wouldn't be spared. He grabbed the boy by the head and said he would grant the kid's wish. The zombie man explained that they used to be regular zombies, but then their memories returned and they got stronger. His villain friend laughed, saying that other zombies couldn't even talk, and they figured they might have evolved as zombies. Gladly, the zombie said he was merciful and would end the boy's life right then. And with a powerful strike, he plunged his hand into the boy's chest. Brutally, he ripped the boy's heart out. The zombie man found it amusing and said it looked like a movie scene. But the villain, in disbelief, stared at the boy still alive. Mirai asked what was happening, since he had asked to be finished off. Surprised, the zombie asked what was going on. The villains panicked and shouted that they should just kill the boy quickly. The man heard and attacked again, wanting to finish the job. And with a strong kick, he threw the boy far away. As the boy crashed in the distance, the villains, who had even lost their appetite, decided to leave. The zombie man turned to the other and asked how the boy could still be alive with his heart ripped out. And suddenly, they saw the boy stand up. Panicking, the zombie men asked again what was going on. The young boy stood and asked what the zombie man had done. Desperate, the villain grew furious, demanding to know why the boy was still alive. Enraged, the young boy asked why he wouldn't just end his life already. The boy then jumped fiercely toward the zombie, and as he did, he grabbed him by the head. He screamed in fury, saying this was how he should have been attacked. With a single blow, he ripped the villain's head off. Crying, he shouted and struck him. The monster's red liquid splattered everywhere. Still in tears, he said this was how it should have been done. After defeating him, the other zombie men watched. Terrified, the villains chose to flee from the boy. The young boy, not understanding what was happening, looked at himself and thought about the pain he felt. But he clenched his fists and concluded that his mother must have gone through even more. There on the street, Mirai stared at the defeated villain between her legs. He also remembered the moment when he was with his mother, happy. The clothes they had received were now ruined. Lost in thought, he stopped in the street, not knowing what to do. Then he started walking, leaving the place. As he left, he said he was sorry to his mother. Now years later, in that cell with his companions, he said he still tried to end his life. Hyuha watched anxiously. The old prisoner was shocked, and the young girl felt sorry for the boy. All of them, sitting on the floor of the room, now looked at the poor boy. His friend Kyuha, emotional, realized that everyone stayed silent, but not out of fear. As he looked at the hero, he saw that no one knew what to say to comfort him. The woman then took a chance and said he was a disappointment. Surprising him, she repeated it, saying he was a disappointment. Kyuha listened in disbelief. Saddened, the boy asked her what she was talking about, and she asked why he wanted to throw his life away. She said he had no idea how his mother had felt. The boy listened, disbelieving. Hyuha, concerned, tried to ease the situation, saying that's not what Jizun meant. Mirai said her mother died because of her, and the same should happen to him. Jizun said he was wrong, and that if she were his mother, she wouldn't even look him in the eye because of that. The young hero glared, furious. Mirai stood up, making Kyuha nervous. He turned to the woman and said she should be careful with what she said. The woman added, asking if he had no idea why his mother was apologizing. She asked what he thought she meant. Was it about the uniform? About being poor? The boy, calm, said the conversation was over. And suddenly, they were caught off guard by a strong tremor, which they thought was an earthquake. Hyuha, worried, thought he should find a way to calm the boy down. The man turned to the hero and ordered him to stop. Jizun observed the situation thoughtfully. She looked at the boy and said he seemed to feel no emotion, but that wasn't true. She added that he only got that angry because she said a few things about his mother. She also said that someone who cares that much about their own mother shouldn't go around saying they want to lose their life. Furthermore, she asked if he thought his mother would want him to be dead too. Furious, he began by telling her to stop, but she ignored him and kept talking. He said his mother knew he would end up like this, that's why she apologized. She concluded that his mother apologized because she knew he would have to endure everything with no family. Hearing that, the boy became uneasy. She also said that, at that moment, it was time to let go of his mother and his heart. Jizin kept speaking, even though the boy didn't want to hear it, and she said that it was the only way for the boy to truly apologize to his mother. The heroes were frightened by what they had just heard. Strangely, that woman reminded him a lot of his mother, almost as if she were speaking directly to him. Hyuha was startled to realize the tremor had stopped. Murray sat down on the floor, and everyone watched her, concerned. The old prisoner asked what was going on, and if that boy was the cause of the earthquake. The young hero, saddened, knelt in the corner to think. But there wasn't much he could do, so he decided to stay there for a while, even in denial. Meanwhile, in the guard's room, the scientist explained that if they wanted to escape, they'd have to defeat Executive Rishul. She admitted she didn't know how it worked, but there was a barrier around the prison area preventing them from leaving. Worried, she said they'd have to face the executive no matter what, but she didn't know much about the area, so she wouldn't have a very good plan. Lee wasn't surprised to hear her admit that, as good of a scientist as she was, she couldn't imagine a way to escape. She remembered her talk with Nuri, where the woman said she didn't think they'd be able to escape. Nuri said the odds were high that an executive was in charge of the farm, which made escape harder. The commander also said that June wouldn't know many details because she hadn't managed to contact the base yet. Lee told her partner about this conversation she'd had with Nuri. As they talked, they were suddenly interrupted by June's alarm. Pleased, she showed the ring-ding-dong wand, which erased short-term memories and also functioned as an alarm. She said it must have gone off because it was almost time to change the pieces. Then someone suddenly entered the room where they were talking. Before cleaning the island during a conversation with Nuri, Lee had asked how they would escape. The commander reassured her, saying that ever since the world fell apart, people like them, trying to do the right thing, were everywhere, and that she would find them. At that moment, she watched a young man enter the room. He noticed Lee's presence and asked if they had switched cleaners again. Dismissing Jiun, the young man, Hoyang, took over the room, sat in a chair, and looked over some papers. He started reflecting on what he would do, thinking it shouldn't be that hard to escape. Lee, realizing the situation, concluded that Nuri must be a few steps ahead. As she approached the young man, she asked if that was the layout of the slave farm. Pleased, she told him they should escape together. She stole his map, leaving him in a panic. Worried, he asked her to finish cleaning and leave the place. Then he said he wasn't playing around. His plan was real. Looking at her anxiously, he wondered what she could be thinking. He said that if any ZOMGAN found out about this, they'd be dead. Lee then began to think of a plan. Suddenly, she grabbed one of the guards by the clothes to strike him. With a strong blow, she knocked him to the ground. The leader's action left the young man and his friend in a panic. The monster got up, furious, asking what she was doing. And once again, she attacked by surprise, punching him in the face. Knocked out, the zombie man fell to the floor. Hoyang was shocked by how easily the woman knocked him out. Lee then decided to grab her wand and erase the zombie man's memory. The woman said, please, that there was no problem in defeating 100 untrained zombies by herself. While erasing the zombie's memory, she also mentioned that in her unit, there was someone even stronger than her. Hoyang, surprised, wondered what he had just witnessed. Lee asked the young man if that had been enough for him to trust her. While she questioned whether she had underestimated him, he said he was convinced. He explained that he knew nothing about her, but he had also planned to escape. Lee was pleased to hear that he thought his life would end either way, so why not try escaping? Lee quickly added that her plan was to get everyone out of that place. Concerned, he said it was too many people. They should at least get a few out as soon as possible. But she disagreed and said there was no point in doing it if they weren't going to save everyone. Lee knew she couldn't demand too much, but asked him to trust her instructions. The young man thought that, given how easily she had defeated the villain, she probably wasn't speaking nonsense, but he still wasn't sure if he could trust her. She asked what the escape route would be and was surprised when he replied that they could only flee through the main entrance. He added that the zombie guard security was extremely loose, so the escape route wouldn't be a problem. Lee said humans were terrified of the ZOMGANs and doubted whether everyone would even try to escape. Jizin was listening closely to the two discussing why humans were so resistant. It was because of an executive named Rishul. She then asked who he was, if he was married, and where she could find him. She said humans could defeat the zombie men, but they needed to be shown that it was possible. In other words, she concluded that they would have to defeat the executive if they wanted to escape no matter what. Hearing that, the young man was shocked and thought he shouldn't have gotten involved with them. Desperate, he thought the people around him were delusional. The next morning, daylight broke and an announcement said it was time for them to work. Lee thought it wouldn't be hard to find the executive, since the night before he had received an official order. His command was to find the humans who had killed the paladin, which meant he would gather with the other ZOMGANs at work time. So when he appeared at the meeting, there would be no better moment to trigger the breakout. Gathered together, Jian and Huiyang were waiting. Hyuga watched anxiously, and Mireille, as always, waited without showing any emotion. At that moment, Lee decided it was showtime, and there, among all the other workers in ZOMGANs, she spotted the executive once again. As she walked, she suddenly stopped in the hallway, blocking everyone. Impatient, the prisoners began complaining at the woman. The prisoner behind her placed a hand on her shoulder, furious, telling her to move already. Suddenly, the leader shouted loudly, instructing Garam to prepare the boat near the main gate. Her voice echoed through the entire place as she said they were getting out of there. Outside, Garam and Dongho were startled by the scream and recognized the captain's voice. Running, they left a campfire behind and rushed to repair the boat. At that moment, all the prisoners were terrified, staring at Lee. A huge zombie man turned to her and asked who she was and why she was shouting. With a single blow, she struck the man hard in the head, taking him down. Ritual watched the situation with curiosity. The leader then said she found it funny that the best escape route was the front gate. As she smashed the villain's head against the wall, she said everything was a result of their arrogance. She turned to the executive and said that day marked the end of their era. Terrified, everyone began to question if she had really taken down a zombie man so easily. Ritual looked furious. He made a massive leap from the second floor, landing calmly on the ground. He turned to Lee and asked if she was the one who defeated the paladin and had now come to face him. She said he had quite the imagination. She was there to free the humans, and he was just a coincidence. Surprised, the prisoners asked if she was really there to help them escape. Ritual ordered everyone to be quiet. He also told them to stop barking because they were too loud. The leader stared at the scene thoughtfully. Ritual grew increasingly furious and began activating his power. The woman watched and noticed that he spread fear throughout that place. The zombie slowly walked toward her and asked how she dared, in his territory, to claim there were humans. He said that whatever she did to get rid of the paladin wasn't reason enough to feel so confident. As he approached her, he said he wanted to show why there was a ranking system among the officers. However, Lee said that, no matter how curious she was, he had chosen the wrong person. She wasn't the one who defeated the paladin, leaving it to the young hero to take over from there, ambushing the villain. With a powerful blow, Ritual was struck, shattering everything around her. Lee watched with satisfaction, hoping the boy would defeat her quickly. Then, the woman instructed all the other prisoners to flee the area. Euphoric, Kyuha kept encouraging people to leave using his special ability. As he began running toward the exit, all the other prisoners followed. The zombie guard shouted that the humans had gone crazy and ordered the gates to be shut. At the main entrance, a large iron gate began to lower, blocking their path. However, already at the entrance, the group's leader waited for them, ready to attack. At that moment, the young Huiyang said he would stick to the plan and asked if it was okay for him to go on without her. She agreed. Another guard called a young man and said they should leave right away. So Huiyang and his friend escaped together. While running, the man asked the boy if they could really trust them or if it would backfire in the end. He said that at first he had doubts, but the captain's firm and confident voice was strangely convincing. In that moment, he felt like a new era was about to begin. He added that either way, they would escape, with or without them. Facing the zombie men, Lee questioned the woman's sanity, asking if she was really going to fight them alone. She said they might have numbers, but behind her, there were many other questions at stake. Arming herself to strike, she said that because of that, she wouldn't let any of them pass through her. Meanwhile, Executive Ritual was enraged. He stared at the young hero and asked who he was. He recognized the boy and asked if he was one of the extra workers who came aboard the ship and whether he was a leader or something like that. Ritual said those humans had shown up talking about a new era and asked if he thought something like that would happen so fast. Murray said he wasn't interested in any of that, so there was no certainty. Ritual said the boy had no idea about anything and should leave, but the boy replied that he couldn't. Furious and impatient, he decided to attack the boy, wishing he would disappear. But as he tried to strike him, the boy calmly retaliated, throwing him far away. The ease with which he was hit surprised the villain. Because of the punch he took, he felt a sharp pain in his gut as he was hurled far. Murray watched during the new battle. Displeased and angry, Ritual dashed forward to attack again. But once again, he was stopped by the young boy's incredible skill. The boy used a type of whip that, when it struck the villain, wounded him. The zombie man clutched his face and screamed in pain. Silently, the boy observed him. At that moment, the villain was tired and injured and wondered what had just happened. He was surprised by the overwhelming and frantic feeling building inside him, as if he wanted to surrender. Saddened, Ritual thought it was like he had felt this pressure before. There, in front of the young boy, he remembered. He searched his memory for the day he invaded a house at the beginning of the end. The day he found a boy and dragged him outside, wanting to devour him with his friends. Remembering the moment the boy begged him to take his life, he recalled that night when he saw that dirty, bloody, furious boy. On that day, Ritual had just become a zombie man. But now, looking once more at the face of our hero, he questioned whether they had met before. And when he realized who he was dealing with, he was stunned and in disbelief. Euphoric, laughing loudly, he was thrilled and said that he had finally found his mentor. The executive's reaction was unexpected, leaving the young boy confused. Ritual recalled that lazy was the perfect word to describe how he had felt for a long time. The day the ZOMGANs first felt fear and realized they would have to become stronger to survive. From then on, he did everything he could to become stronger and survive. He grew stronger and stronger until he became an executive. But at some point, he realized he had become too powerful. Bored, crushing an insect on his desk, he noticed there was nothing that could entertain him anymore. So he tried to amuse himself with luxury brands and designer goods, but nothing was enough. But in that moment, Ray had appeared before him once again. He looked at the boy and remembered that he had shown him what true fear was, inspiring him to grow stronger. Excited, he asked the boy to give him again the feeling of being a cornered animal. After witnessing the villain's excitement, the boy struck him in the face. Knocked out, Ritual was sent flying. With the force of the blow, when he hit the ground, he caused a massive explosion. Pleased, the villain ran back toward the boy, saying how incredible he thought it all was. Suddenly, a huge brain-shaped orb was hurled toward the monster, hitting him. Mirai made a great leap and prepared to strike him again. A powerful blow hit the villain, causing several explosions around his body. During the attack, Ritual realized that with all that power, he truly could be defeated. But it was exactly that rush of adrenaline he sought, and he was loving it. The executive recovered, made a huge leap, and decided to tell the boy something interesting. He said that among humans there were transcendents, but some ZOMGANs also had special abilities. He then spread 2 massive wings and said they were called Predians. In midair, he activated his power. Skill manifestation, bloody burst. The boy listened without enthusiasm and countered the attack with a flurry of bones launched at the villain. Ritual laughed as he could easily dodge attacks like that, freely flying through the sky. Mirai watched him thoughtfully once again. The hero kneeled down and placed one hand on the ground. Then he leaped with force, heading toward the sky. He reached the villain and struck him hard. He grabbed Ritual by the head, leaving him stunned, and then hurled him powerfully to the ground, creating a huge crater. The boy stood face to face with his opponent, but the zombie man was already flying again, so the boy tried to strike him once more. Ritual was surprised by the young one's ability, as he could also fly and keep up with him. While they fought, he admitted that the boy was much better and more skilled than he had expected. And while he was still having fun, he was struck by the boy again, being slammed into the ground once more. Lee was watching the battle closely and was shocked to see the boy flying. She noticed the boy emitting red liquid from the soles of his feet, seemingly flying and becoming even more powerful. June was surprised to see the leader and concerned, asked if she had already defeated everyone. She replied that although there had been many, none of them had combat abilities, and so she ordered the young woman to take everyone to the boat while Mirai fought. Hyuha then ran, guiding the prisoners who followed him, and when they reached the gate, they noticed ZOMGANs waiting to fight them, so June prepared to face them. She activated her special ability, Knowledge Transfer, holding in her hands a taekwondo manual. June and Dongho met their leader and apologized for being late, but informed her that the boat was ready. Lee was pleased, but her companion was terrified watching June fight. As they fled, the old prisoner said he couldn't see Heian anymore. The woman, surprised, asked about it, and he said she had been with them, but must have gotten lost. Jizin ran back, determined to find her. Meanwhile, Ritual continued showing off his abilities. While fighting Mirai, he struck and tore off one of his arms. Mirai looked emotionlessly at his new wound, and from that hole, he launched another attack, a sequence of bones striking the villain. Thus, the zombie man screamed while being attacked by the hero. Quickly, the boy struck him with a strong punch, sending him flying. But when he hit the ground, it caused an explosion that startled Jizin, who was running nearby. Suddenly, she spotted Mirai in the middle of the battle. When he noticed the woman's presence, he asked her to leave the area. He added that it was too dangerous for her there, and she should go. Ritual was down, covered in debris from the destruction. Mirai soon noticed something coming her way, almost hitting her. The villain asked how she would explain that look of weakness. Jizin quickly realized that she was the real target. Frightened, the woman froze. In front of her, she looked at Mirai. At that moment, the boy noticed his friend's desperation. He quickly extended his hand, stopping the attack from hitting her, saving her. Ritual watched from afar in disbelief as the woman asked if the boy was okay. The hero looked at his injured hand. The villain asked his teacher, Mirai, what that had been, what that wound was to him, while the boy held him to strike. The girl then hit him, sending him flying. Jizin watched the battle from the ground, but she was soon surprised as her young friend Heian came running and calling for her. She, along with their old bald and violent cellmate, said that the man hadn't been evacuated yet. Jizin looked at the man and couldn't understand what kind of special treatment that was, as he wore clothes that made him look ridiculous. Meanwhile, the battle with Executive Rishul was still ongoing, and soon he suspected that the boy was now fighting much harder than before. The young hero struck him hard in the face, and then, a powerful blow to his stomach sent him flying. And so he watched the villain fall from the sky once again. Then he unleashed a series of punches, landing more hits. At that point in the battle, heavily wounded, the villain screamed in pain, but he still hadn't been defeated and kept fighting the young hero. And then he was struck once more with a powerful punch. The villain was hit in the face again. Murray then triggered several small explosions around the zombie man's body, and now he used one of his special abilities. He brutally struck the already injured villain, tearing some of his limbs apart. He grabbed the villain by the neck, making him scream. The young boy held Rishul under his control for a few moments. The zombie man, nearly defeated, screamed in desperation. His legs had already been ripped from his body, and the young hero stared at him before delivering the final blow. Rishul groaned in pain once more. Murray released the injured villain, throwing him toward the ground. As he watched him fall, he admitted, for the first time, that he actually wanted to win that fight. Rishul hit the ground, making a loud noise and destroying the floor of the area. Wounded, the villain watched the hero standing still. Murray held a bone like a weapon, ready to strike him again. Thrilled by all the adrenaline and fun, the zombie man laughed maniacally. Satisfied, Rishul said it had been an honor to fight him one last time, and that thanks to the boy, he had reached that point. Thus, only that boy had the right to defeat him, and he begged the boy to take his life quickly. But he was caught off guard when Murray said he wouldn't defeat him. From afar, he heard his leader Lee's voice, informing him that all the people had already escaped and telling him to join them. There, during the battle, the young boy said the order was to beat the villain until he was nearly defeated and knock him out. And now, there the villain was, injured and motionless on the ground. Lee wondered if the villain was still alive, and if he had only been knocked out. Her young companion warned that the barrier had been deactivated and everyone could now escape. She told Kyuha that he should help the people and they would deal with the remaining Bis men. At that time of day, on the human slave farm, evening was approaching. The young man helped the other prisoners gather their belongings. They were happy to realize they had truly managed to escape. Through the ruined streets, the young hero walked with the villain tied up, dragging him along. He handed the villain over to his leader, who was impressed that the boy had managed to handle him so easily. She asked the boy to wait a moment for now, so Murray waited for further orders. As Jizin passed by the boy, she decided to talk briefly. She thanked him for saving her life earlier. The young boy listened silently. At that moment, he remembered when she had told him it was time to let go of his mother and his heart. He thought for a moment before saying something to the woman. He reminded her that she had asked him to let go, but then he asked what the purpose of his life would be now. Surprised by the boy's question, she watched him, and she said that was something he would have to figure out on his own. She confessed that no one really knew the purpose of their lives since the ZOMGANs took control. She also said that some of them were still looking for family members who might already be dead, but they still tried to survive. She said others hoped that tomorrow would be a better day. Like the boy, everyone stayed alive because they were looking for something that gave them hope. In other words, that's what he should look for too, something that gave him hope. Nearby, their teammates listened closely. Lee quickly concluded that this was why the boy had given up on his life, though she didn't completely understand it. Kyuva added that Murray seemed to be searching for something, a reason to go on living without his mother. Lee, thoughtful, tried to decide what she would do about the boy. Then she turned to him and called him over to talk. She admitted that, up until now, she had only thought of him as a tool to end it all. And she said he was with the group because their goals had aligned. As an invitation, she said he could now be treated as a member of the team from that moment on. Then she decided to ask one thing first, if he still wanted to give up on his life. He thought for a few seconds before answering, and all of his teammates went silent as he agreed. Lee then said she understood. Turning her back and leaving the area, she said the boy had done a good job. Before nightfall, she told everyone to head to the deck and get ready to leave. As he walked away, Kyuha reflected, watching the girl. One person's happiness could bring sadness to someone else, because everyone had their own kind of hope. And so, the group of humans set out on their journey. Right after they left the place, the villain Rishul began to wake up. Lee waited for him, please, so they could talk. Night fell, and a ship sailed across the sea. Inside the vessel, several former prisoners sat and rested. Garam tried to read her book, but was interrupted by the snoring of her friend sleeping beside her. In a room within the ship, the villain was being interrogated. He was asked to tell them everything he knew. At that moment he understood why his life had been spared. They wanted to extract useful information from him, but he regretted it as he wouldn't help them. He looked at the young hero and said he had nothing to gain from giving information, so they wouldn't reach any agreement. Lee said he didn't realize his position, as this wasn't a negotiation. Cuba entered the scene and used his special ability, True Manipulation, commanding him to start laughing. Hearing it, the villain showed a cute smile under the effect of the spell. Lee said that even if he didn't talk, there would be other ways for them to get information out of him. Still smiling cutely, he said he understood and asked them to stop. The group's scientist let out a burst of laughter, but quickly composed herself, thinking she had to preserve her dignity as a genius and a scientist. The leader was surprised to hear the villain say he would have talked anyway, regardless of the skill. As soon as the true hypnosis was lifted, he showed an angry face. He said he hadn't stayed silent because of the executives, but because he was pursuing something else. He explained he had nothing left to gain by being loyal to the ZOMGANs. He admitted he would gain much more from Leader Lee, and he added that there was something much more exciting. He stared at Mireille, who was carefully listening to the conversation between the two. He said that fight with his teacher had been so thrilling that it was all he could think about. Lee, curious, asked what he truly wanted. Ritual said he would like to join her and her team. The leader, confused, asked what he would gain by joining them. He admitted he could stay close to his teacher, and that would be enough for him. Cuva, furious, asked what he was scheming. Lee said they could extract information from him regardless of his will, and questioned what the benefit of the deal was. He questioned the captain's intelligence, saying she had freed everyone from the island, but what now? He asked if the plan was to keep sailing forever, because the moment they stopped on land, the ZOMGANs would find them, and asked if her plan was for her team to survive while the others died after all that effort. They was surprised by the villain's reasoning and intelligence. He said there was another island nearby, and that everyone could hide and stay safe there. He teased, saying she wouldn't be able to discover things she didn't know just by asking, only if he told her. Hyuha listened angrily, and said that regardless of whether he was telling the truth, he didn't approve of it. As he insisted they couldn't work with him, he was shocked to see his captain accepting the deal. She said the zombie would not be allowed to eat human flesh, and that she would always keep an eye on him. She added that the conversation would resume once they arrived at this new island. While Kyuha was confused, he admitted that unfortunately, all of it was true, and it was the best option they had. He reassured him, saying Mireille could handle him at any time, and he wouldn't be able to do anything in his current state. Kyuha reflected, questioning how they could work with a ZOMGAN. As the captain left the room, he recalled that she had never made a wrong decision, but still had his doubts. The scientist turned to Ritual and asked how he had created that barrier on Auric Island, and he said she would understand when they reached the new island he mentioned. However, at their destination, the ship found only a single palm tree and a small piece of land. Confused, the team concluded that the monster couldn't be trusted. After all, he was a ZOMGAN and an executive on top of that. Kyuha reflected once more, thinking his captain had never made a wrong decision. On the small island, Ritual told the captain she should look under the tree. Skeptical, she activated her ability, while the man who had ignored his team and let him in watched. Confused, he asked what was going on and noticed she emanated the same aura as his teacher. He tried to calm her, saying she didn't need to get worked up, just press something that looked like a stone. She crouched down and pressed the object against the ground, and to her surprise, the sea split apart violently. The island transformed into a kind of elevator that descended rapidly. Suddenly, a great city formed beneath them. Satisfied with the leader's surprise, he said he didn't tell lies, and that they could invite all the humans there. He said he hadn't built the place, just found it. He didn't know how it came to be or why, but he used to go there to skip work sometimes. Lee said that detail didn't matter, and that it would be enough to meet their needs. While they talked, Ritual said that just by looking at the woman, he could tell she possessed great power. He asked why she had ordered Mireille to fight him and said she could likely defeat the other executives as well. He said she must have her reasons, but claimed she wasn't as strong as she thought. He watched her in disbelief, saying she must be at the same level as his teacher, or even higher. Ritual told her that to return to the surface, she just needed to press the stone again. After that, her team also descended to see the place and were surprised. Lee ordered Huiyang to assign houses to the people, and she also ordered her team to follow her. They walked through the city until they found something resembling a research institute. Nuri commented that it would be good enough to serve as a new headquarters. Garam, surprised, asked how she had gotten there, but the commander chose not to comment. Lee was pleased to see that Biri had already arrived. However, the commander was furious about the way she had been dragged to the place. After calming down, Nuri was pleased to know that Lee had completed the mission and that Jiun was safe. Upon hearing Nuri, Jiun became emotional knowing the commander had been worried about her. Nuri was glad to have her weapons specialist back. Lee said Mireille had done a good job, asking what the boy had done with her boat. He said he had thrown it somewhere, and his friends were shocked since it wasn't just a toy. In front of the new headquarters, the leader suggested they take a break. June walked through the lab happy and emotional. Meanwhile, Garam had fun with Dongho. Lee spoke with Nuri about the new plans, and Kyuha tried to get closer to Mirai once more. While everyone was gathered, Nuri thanked them all for completing the mission, and said that place would now be their new base of operations, named the Department of Destruction, and that Research Institute would naturally become their new headquarters. She emphasized they would have enough time to explore the location better later. But at that moment, the priority was to inform them of their new future plans. The commander turned to Ritual and asked if he knew the location of the Crimson Gang's book, but he denied it. So she concluded that for now, they could only use the information they had to destroy the Supreme Guardians of the Crimson Gang. Those being number 5, Yeru, 4, Nate Fisi, 3, Arlo, 2, Spadus, and 1, Turate. Thus, the hunt for the executives would begin at that moment. She also concluded that the first targets would be number 5 and number 4. On the map, she said that Changwon, the city they occupied, had penetrable defenses and many military supplies. Therefore, it wouldn't be an easy mission, but if successful, they would gain an excellent outpost, with the priority being to take the city. That way, their unit would grow stronger and no longer depend on Mirai. She highlighted that if they were left behind, they would someday need to be able to protect the human race on their own. Lee quickly thought it would be possible if she could find a way to defeat him. The scientist asked the commander what the consequences of the mission would be if it succeeded. She added by asking whether the ZOMGANs wouldn't retaliate once they found out they had taken the city of Changwon. Nuri explained that they shouldn't worry, since Changwon had an omnidirectional defensive map and a laser cannon. Besides that, it had an impenetrable defense due to high protective walls, making it not easily invaded. Ritual added more information about the city. He said it was built as an absolute defense zone, not easily subdued. Surprised by the information, Garam asked how they would invade it. Nuri admitted she was still thinking about how they would do it, and as she observed Mirai, she thought maybe they didn't need to worry too much about it. Nuri emphasized that many twists could happen, but if successful, it would be the team's greatest achievement. Thus, by eliminating the executives and taking the city, they would expand their territory. And with the goal of rebuilding the human city, no one would need to live in fear of the ZOMGANs anymore. But suddenly, Kyuha appeared, doubting Ritual's information. He questioned whether the zombie was lying and suggested the ZOMGANs might have set a trap. Kyuha couldn't understand why the leader trusted him so easily and doubted his kindness for wanting to be near Mirai. The ZOMGAN asked if one of them couldn't betray their own species, and said Kyuha was underestimating the respect he had for Mirai. But Ritual reflected for a moment, and then concluded that he wouldn't want to be by the hero's side. In truth, he wanted to fight him again, and that's why he was there. He wondered how he would fight with his body in that condition. Lee tried to reassure her friend, saying they would investigate the location first, and if needed, they would change the plan. Lee didn't ask them to trust him, but to consider the most rational option they had. Not fully convinced, Kyuha agreed, not having much of a choice. Nuri said the operation would begin in a few months, but before that, she had a favor to ask. Her wish was for them to recruit more people from the group rescued from Auric Island. And with that, the meeting of the day came to an end. Lee called Mirai for a moment so they could talk. Meanwhile, Garam was leaving the room, talking with Dongho. Ritual remained restrained and silent in a corner visible to everyone. Jun was entertained, learning more about the lab and the computers in the place. Shocked, she questioned the underwater facilities and how that institute had so much information. Analyzing the place, she believed the barrier on Auric Island must have used the same technology. She reflected on how they could have developed such advanced technology hundreds of years ago. She began to question who these people were and why they had created such technology. Soon, Jun was interrupted by Lee and Mirai. The leader asked if the scientist remembered the knife she had created and explained that it had been able to wound Mirai. She emphasized that she wanted to create a weapon based on that, one capable of ending the young man's life. Disbelieving, Jun asked if she truly wanted a creation designed to harm someone. Lee agreed and said that was the only reason the boy was with them, and handed her the knife. Saddened, Jun preferred to think she wasn't creating a weapon, but fulfilling his wish. Lee agreed, and the boy quietly and attentively listened to the conversation. Convinced, the scientist said she would analyze the knife and do her best. But she changed the subject and invited Lee to look at the computers with her. She explained that she hadn't previously known the material used in the blade, but the computers there had information on it. Called Ranja flour, it was the material used to create the knife, discovered after the ZOMGANs appeared. By combining the flour's material with other metals, it increased the metal alloy's durability and gave it special properties. Lee observed the information attentively. Jun said they could create Mirai's weapon and many other powerful ones. The scientist then followed orders and searched for the coordinates to locate the flowers. The leader quickly considered who would be assigned to the mission to retrieve the flowers. That way, she informed the young hero that there was a task for him. The next morning, strong winds swept across the sky. Mirai was flying, carrying Garam and Dongho, while the girl read the coordinates of the flowers. As they flew, she grew irritated with all of Dongho's screaming and panic. Flying over a forest, she announced they had reached their target location, Yangsan, Cheongsong Mountain. When they landed, Garam worried about whether her friend was okay, and as she observed, she thought that Mireille and the girls would be enough for that mission. As they walked through the forest, she said the mission was to retrieve a few ranja flowers. Looking around, she didn't know their exact location, so it would take a while to find them. Garam was startled when she saw Dongho feeling sick in front of her. He ran into the forest so he could throw up again, and as he ran, he came face to face with a zombie. Frightened, he screamed, thinking he had seen a ZOMGAN. Confused, Garam analyzed the situation, and soon they realized it was a corpse covered in paint. She suggested looking for tracks, and maybe they could gather some information about the flowers. Besides that, she got excited thinking it might be someone interesting to recruit to their team. But soon they were surprised by another corpse covered in paint, this time a child. Garam and Dongho stared at it, horrified. In that instant, Garam could only think of one thing. There was the body of a ZOMGAN and a human, both covered in mysterious paint. So if there really was a transcendent around, maybe he was dangerous. Dongho mentioned he had heard a rumor before, that a mad scientist wanted to create a fusion of ZOMGANs and humans. And so he asked, worried, if that was the place where the experiments happened. Garam said she didn't believe in something like that. But still uneasy, she said it would be better to fall back. Nervous, she thought she needed to find out what was going on and that she should be leading that mission. She remembered when she talked with the leader before departing. Lee said she trusted her as the mission leader. She recalled that now she had a subordinate and that he was reliable and responsible. And so, Garam remembered her captain saying she would do well. Soon determined, she said that because Lee trusted her, she couldn't return empty-handed. She decided to move forward, even without knowing what had happened there. She also said that everyone was counting on them, so they would find the flower and return to base. At nightfall, Dongho was arranging the sleeping bags, and Garam lamented that they hadn't found anything. The girl began to worry since they hadn't come across anything resembling the flower, and she hoped they hadn't gone extinct. Disappointed and concerned, she preferred to believe they would find one the next day. Lying down, ready to sleep, she said she would think better after taking a short nap. While they were preparing to sleep, they were amazed that they had never seen the young hero rest. They said he never really got tired, so he didn't get sleepy. Dongho asked if he could rest while the boy stood watch. Sad, the young companion looked at Mireille thoughtfully. Getting ready to sleep, she thought it was all just too much. The boy was very strong, and on top of that, didn't need to rest. She recalled that she fainted as soon as they encountered the paladin, and that she had been too scared to do anything. Also, on Auriok Island, she had hesitated a lot and didn't help effectively. Likewise, the same had happened that day, where she hadn't lived up to her leadership position. Dissatisfied, she sighed as she lay down to rest. All of this, even though she had made the decision to become a heroine. She also remembered a fire that had happened years before. While the fire spread, someone was screaming for help. Garam, very young, was begging for someone to save her. In the middle of the flames, there was the sound of someone arriving. Fortunately, someone came to get her and rescue her. She remembered being emotional when she saw the person who saved her, who in her eyes at the time was nothing less than a hero, and on that day she decided she too would become a great heroine like that person. But she regretted that, the way she was now, she wasn't strong or decisive like the captain. She also hadn't been clever like her commander. She didn't have special crafting abilities like her scientist friend, Jiun. She thought it was pathetic to believe she could ever become a heroine. Her thoughts were interrupted when the group was startled by a loud noise. Near them, a mountain child was being attacked by a zombie man. She was screaming for help as he prepared to devour her, but he was quickly struck hard in the head by Garam, and so she stepped in front of the girl, ready to defend her. The zombie found it strange for a child to be there alone, and asked if she was an assassin who set traps for her victim. However, a woman was watching from a distance and began to wonder who the girl protecting the child was. Convinced that the young girl was an assassin, she was pleased to have found her in order to defeat her. Garam said she didn't know what he was talking about and pulled out a Muay Thai book. Then she activated her special knowledge transfer unit. As she prepared for battle, she warned the monster that she wasn't what he was looking for. She struck him, causing a loud crash and explosion. With impressive force, she hit him under the chin while kneeling. The mysterious woman was surprised by what she saw. Garam, in a fighting stance, was ready for the next strike. The desperate zombie man tried to defend himself, but the young girl was frustrated to see that he had blocked her kick. She then decided to hit him with a strong elbow strike, using a Muay Thai technique. He immediately said the rumors must be true, that she wasn't an ordinary human. Suddenly, her friends arrived, and Dongho said she shouldn't run off like that whenever she felt like it. Furious, she ordered the mountain boy to leave the area. As the boy fled, the zombie man prepared a large stone to throw at him. He threw it, terrifying the child. Desperate, Garam screamed for Mireille, but when she ordered him to save himself, he showed no reaction. Confused and worried, the girl knew she had to act. She positioned herself between the rock and the child, taking the hit and saving the child. They were both thrown back by the impact. Seeing the young girl fall to the ground, the zombie man asked if she really intended to sacrifice herself to save the child. Desperate, Dongho screamed, begging Murray to save her. But calmly, the young hero said he couldn't, because he was ordered not to. The zombie told the girl to just say where the humans were. But suddenly, everyone was surprised by a magical attack that came out of nowhere. As soon as the zombie man was defeated, Garam collapsed to the ground, shaken. The child, who had been crying in fear, was now moved by what she had witnessed, and suddenly there she was, the village heroine who had come to save them. Thus, the mysterious woman introduced herself as Min-song Kim, saying she was a heroine. Garam looked at her, confused and in disbelief. The heroine invited them to rest, and Dongho found the invitation reasonable. However, Min-song was surprised to hear the young girl refusing. She explained that they had other matters to resolve at that moment. So, the heroine and the child left the place, and the young man remembered they should find someone to treat the girl's wounds. When they saw the zombie man's head lying on the ground, stained with paint, Garam found it suspicious, and she asked if it wasn't similar to the corpse she had seen that morning. She concluded that the person was suspicious. Garam turned to Murray and asked what he had meant earlier. When she asked who had told him not to help, he answered, "The woman with the cap, his captain." Unhappy with what she heard, she told the boy that she didn't need his help. Angrily, she thought she could do it alone. Dongho watched the uncomfortable scene. Meanwhile, the heroine safely dropped the child off in the village. As soon as they arrived, the child's mother and father were overjoyed and ran desperately to meet her. Kneeling and hugging the child, they thanked the heroine deeply for her help. From afar, Garam spied on the village through binoculars and wondered if those people had fled from the city. Over the radio, she asked Dongho if he had seen anything. Far from the city, she and her partner were preparing to spy. Without very clear instructions, the young man was confused about what he should do. Garam then decided to head to the village to gather information up close. Soon within sight, the heroine was walking strangely through the streets. While spying on her, Garam got startled, almost being discovered, and hid again. Worried, the young girl recalled the rumor of someone trying to fuse humans and zombie men. Determined to gather more information, she decided to follow the suspicious heroine. Worried, she concluded that, if that was the scientist they had heard about, she would have to stop her. Inside the house, the heroine was manipulating some blue ink and calling it Bird Fred. The dessert-like ink took the shape of a bird, and she asked what he suggested she do. While the bird responded, Garam found it suspicious, as she believed the heroine was alone. She strained to hear something from outside, but couldn't quite make anything out. The bird had suggested she do what she did best, and the heroine said she feared being caught. Convinced she had heard enough, Garam slammed the door hard, breaking it open. She stormed into the house, calling the heroine a mad scientist, and saying her plans ended there. But the young woman was surprised by the heroine's reaction. She was crying and saying she would search no matter what. Inside the house, with the door torn off, the two decided to talk. The heroine cried as she confessed she wasn't as strong as people thought, despite having some physical strength. It turns out that, at some point, she managed to defeat a zombie, and people began calling her a heroine. She admitted she didn't know how to be a real heroine and just got lucky with that zombie man. But she also said that, as strange as it was, despite everything, the title of hero had been a burden at first. However, as everyone started calling her a heroine, without realizing it, she actually felt happy. She also shared that she had spent her whole life tucked away in her room, drawing, and that was the first time she received any attention. And now she regretted that, even wanting to stop pretending to be a heroine, she just kept missing every chance to tell them the truth. Garam asked why she seemed so suspicious walking around the village and said she was worried about the girl refusing her request. She had a habit of laughing when she felt frustrated. The heroine explained that the rumor of the trap killer had spread and that the number of zombies heading toward the village was slowly increasing. But more importantly, the fake heroine had asked something of Garam. Worried, she told her that a long time ago, a zombie man had told her something, that someone from Changwon would defeat her. Shocked to hear the name Changwon, the girl listened to Min-song confess that she couldn't fight alone, and then she asked if maybe they could help her. A loud noise interrupted their conversation, and the scare both of them got was huge. Outside, among rocks and a dry landscape, an unknown voice echoed, asking where they were. From the shadows, a sinister figure emerged with glowing red eyes full of rage, ordering the trap killer to come out of hiding. The sudden sound startled Garam and Min-song Kim again. Once more, the strange voice was heard among the rocks, asking where the wanted one was. Another creature with intense red eyes appeared, demanding that the trap killer come out immediately. A group of girls suddenly appeared, and one of them announced that her body had just arrived. With red hair, the girls marched towards several people, who began to scream desperately, saying it was a ZOMGAN and that everyone should run. Inside the house, the girl in the yellow jacket asked if Minsong had heard it, and the heroine jumped out while Garon shouted her name. The girl from the Lethal Force unit yelled, asking where she was going, and Minson replied that her companion had heard the ZOMGAN appear in the village. Minson Kim shouted that she had to go, leaving the other girl speechless as she remembered how terrified she had been just moments earlier. Without thinking too much, her partner decided to go with her and shouted for Minson to wait, but ended up losing sight of her in the dark and wondered where she could have gone. Meanwhile, Dongho called the protagonist Sunbae and asked him to say something, then quickly told him to go there while Mireille asked where. The boy grabbed the radio, which emitted a strange noise, and he shouted in desperation, wanting to know where he was and where he should go. In the village, panic took over the crowd fleeing from the red-haired girls as someone screamed for everyone to run quickly. Using a technique called Meteor Sword, one of the red-haired ZOMGANs threw shurikens at a villager who was begging for help. Even injured, the man kept screaming, and the ZOMGAN, looking bored, asked where the trap killer was, saying it was getting boring like this. Running non-stop, Garam's companion appeared, screaming for help and calling out to the hero. He then threw a round white object, thinking that in the end it probably wouldn't make a difference. The ZOMGAN thought that if she kept killing, the trap killer would eventually show up. Laughing excitedly, she found it all very entertaining and couldn't believe that regular ZOMGANs had received such an exciting mission. Suddenly, the creature stopped, surprised to sense something approaching. Running with determination, Minson Kim appeared with her paint palette and a large brush like a young painter ready to act. Fallen and injured, Dongho saw the heroine approaching and felt relieved that she had arrived. Horrified by the scene around her, the young girl screamed, asking what had happened there. There were many villagers' bodies on the ground, and she realized that although some had escaped, most were already dead. Kneeling next to Dongho, the heroine apologized for taking so long to help. With a strange smile, the leader ZOMGAN stared at Minsong and asked if it was really her. Curious, the creature wanted to know why Minsong took so long, saying she had nearly killed everyone. Sweating and full of rage, the girl shouted, demanding to know how the ZOMGAN had the nerve to kill the villagers. Raising her brush like a wand, Minsong announced open palette and activated all the traps. Then she launched an attack called Rainbow, firmly declaring that she herself had set all the traps there. The leader ZOMGAN screamed furiously in her direction and promised that the young painter would pay for that. Stomping the ground, the creature interrupted Minsong, asking what was going through her head to act so recklessly. Regarding the young painter, the red-haired girl confirmed that she was the so-called trap killer. Completely shaken, Minsong Kim wondered how that thing had managed to get there. A massive, colorful explosion spread out, and she thought, devastated, that all the traps she had spent months planting had disappeared. Lying on the ground, the girl simply concluded that now was the time to act. Leaping with excitement, the ZOMGAN looked ready to have fun and wondered when everything had started to go so wrong. With deep sadness in her eyes, the young painter whispered an apology to the villagers. Right after, her body seemed to explode, transforming into a dark silhouette with red stains all over it. Covered by these marks, the suspicious heroine rose, staring at the red-haired ZOMGANs who were in shock. Terrified, the ZOMGAN girls wondered what kind of creature that was and what was going on. Looking over her shoulder, the girls saw the leader ZOMGAN shouting in disbelief, asking if that was all her power, since it seemed like the attack was weak on purpose. Before the fallen young painter, the leader ZOMGAN commented with boredom that everything was getting tedious. Appearing out of nowhere, Senior Garam landed a strong punch on one of the ZOMGANs, who screamed from the impact. Stopping beside the suspicious heroine lying on the ground, the Transcendent asked if she was okay, while Minsong Kim could barely respond. Looking at the scattered bodies, the girl from the Lethal Force unit deeply mourned the villagers' fate. With a shocked face, Senior Garam realized she had arrived too late and worriedly wondered if they were all already dead. She soon realized that wasn't the case, as there were still some visibly wounded survivors among the fallen bodies. Running to the scene, Dongho and the protagonist arrived, and the boy asked what had happened, while Garam asked the hero to help the wounded and promised to explain later. Supporting the young painter, Dongho asked if a ZOMGAN had appeared and why all the villagers were gathered like that, and she explained it was because of a ceremony involving a very rare flower. In a hurry, the Transcendent shouted for everyone to move quickly, saying the details would come later. From behind Senior Garam, the leader of the ZOMGANs appeared stealthily and curiously asked who she was, calling her sister. In a swift motion, the red-haired ZOMGAN attacked the girl from the Lethal Force unit. The strike landed cleanly, and the Transcendent fell to the ground from the impact. Even on the ground, Senior Garam clenched her fist, showing a very determined expression. With a strange glow, her counterattack hit the ZOMGAN directly in the face, as if she had activated some hidden power. After the blow, the girl from the Lethal Force unit ran off, chased by the ZOMGAN girls into the forest. Sweaty and breathless, Senior Garam thought about how fast that ZOMGAN was in her attacks. It crossed the Transcendent's mind that, had she reached out her hand, the enemy would surely have sliced off her arm without hesitation. With a mocking tone, the red-haired leader of the ZOMGANs praised the girl from the Lethal Force unit for her agility and asked if she was the real trap assassin. Seeing no chance of victory in that fight, Senior Garan decided that fleeing was her only option. Shouting firmly, the girl ordered Dongho to gather the wounded and run, promising to catch up shortly, and the boy nodded without hesitation. A slight smirk at the corner of her mouth showed that the ZOMGAN leader was merely confirming something in her mind. While the suspicious heroine was being helped by Dongho, and the protagonist observed everything closely, the boy asked if anyone could still move and told them to grab the wounded and run. Suddenly, with an alarmed expression, Dongho shouted for them to wait. Our hero remained silent, eyes downcast, as if lost in deep thought. Through the forest, Senior Garam ran with all the speed she could muster. In an instant, one of the boys was hit by something resembling a whip, screaming in pain, while another just let out a gasp of shock. With shurikens firmly in hand, the protagonist ordered no one to move, warning that any misstep would be fatal. The red-haired girl struck a bold pose, and the leader introduced herself as Captain Ji-So Che-Jae from Squad 3 of Changwon's defense team. With pride, Ji-So Che-Jae explained that she and her sisters operated as one single body. Continuing with confidence, the captain declared that their thoughts and movements were the same, which granted them 4 times the power with each attack. Now close to the Transcendent, Ji-So Che-Jae smiled and asked if they were going to have some fun together. With a firm voice, protecting the young painter, Dongho replied that they would fight to the death if necessary. Faced with this declaration, Senior Garam was completely stunned, trying to understand what Dongho had just said. In a threatening tone, Ji-So Che-Jae ordered silence and asked if that was a yes. Silently watching the situation, the protagonist wondered if they expected him to do nothing. Captain Lee Kyung instructed our hero that, if anything were to happen, all responsibility would fall on Senior Garam, and if she died, the Transcendent's journey would end. Unable to hide her surprise at what she heard, the girl from the Lethal Force unit simply nodded and asked for them to begin. Smirking sarcastically, Ji-So Che-Jae said that silence was an affirmative response to Dongho's earlier provocation. Overtaken by the urge to fight, Senior Garam shouted that her journey wouldn't end like that. The ZOMGAN's attack came fast, with a comment mixing surprise and admiration, saying it was the first time a human had dodged her strike. In a swift move, Ji-So Che-Jae launched another attack and asked if the Transcendent would be able to dodge again. With an impressive leap, the girl avoided the impact that shook the ground and let out a frightened scream. Panting and covered in sweat, Senior Garam felt the enemy was merely having fun at her expense and questioned why she was the only one being targeted. In a mocking tone, the ZOMGAN captain wondered if she could defeat that idiot. In a matter of seconds, the girl from the Lethal Force unit was hit on the side and let out a groan of pain. Right after, the Transcendent was struck again and screamed, realizing the attack was fast and precise. But it was also coming from all 3 ZOMGANs in perfect formation, with their total focus on her. Desperate and shielding her face, the girl screamed, not knowing how to defend herself, overwhelmed by confusion. A sound of pure terror escaped from one of the villagers near Dongho, while the teammate next to him stood there completely lost. Overcome by fear, the villager shouted that he was leaving and tried to escape, abandoning the others behind. The eyes of Ji-So Che-Jae gleamed as she spotted the attempt to flee with a look of predatory satisfaction. At an unbelievable speed, the villager was cut down mid-run, and Dongho was horrified as he remembered the warning given by the protagonist. The sight of the scene left Senior Garam completely shaken, and the ZOMGAN captain remarked with disdain that humans were truly foolish. Thinking quickly, the girl understood that giving up wasn't an option, and that to save the people, she would have to defend herself. The memory of the 3 martial arts manuals reignited her hope, and she decided to use everything she had. With the boxing book in hand, a green aura surrounded Senior Garam, who sought a way to defeat Ji-So Che-Jae. With sarcasm in her gaze, the ZOMGAN leader watched and commented on the girl's nervousness, asking if she was finally going to show her true strength. Charging forward decisively after activating the knowledge transfer skill, the Transcendent visibly excited Ji-So Che-Jae. Using the boxing technique, the girl from the Lethal Force unit delivered a strong blow to the ZOMGAN leader. With the advantage of close combat, Senior Garam realized this was great, as it reduced the reach of the enemy's sword. Seeing that the opponent couldn't use her weapon, the Transcendent recognized the opportunity to create an opening. The ZOMGAN was hit and responded by telling her to get out of the way because she was getting in the way of her sword. Taking advantage of the opening and breaking the enemy's guard, Senior Garam was already planning her next move. Without hesitation, the Transcendent prepared to land the final blow on her opponent before it was too late. Thinking to herself, The girl from the Lethal Force unit explained that her ability consisted of absorbing knowledge with her entire body, and that it intensified with reading. Even so, she was also capable of acquiring knowledge simply through touch. Using the Muay Thai technique, Senior Garam landed a powerful kick that drew a scream from the ZOMGAN. Immediately afterward, a precise punch made the enemy groan in pain. Declaring that it was time for boxing, the Transcendent launched a flurry of blows at Ji So-cheja. With admiration, the ZOMGAN leader praised the girl, saying she looked impressive now that she was being serious, but admitted she was starting to struggle. Noticing the enemy lowering her guard, Senior Garam predicted that another opportunity would soon arise. With a surprised expression, the ZOMGAN captain questioned what was approaching, while the girl prepared to attack. The impact on the ground made the Transcendent think that any mistake could be costly. Knowing that even a millisecond was enough, Senior Garam charged forward with a kick, attempting to end the fight. However, she was struck first by Ji So-cheja, which left her shocked and wounded. Realizing that this wasn't how she had imagined it and questioning if it was even real. Coughing up a red liquid, Senior Garam felt the weight of the battle and the severity of her injuries, spinning through the air until they hit the ground. The ZOMGANs drew a mocking comment from Ji So-cheja, who said that had been very cute of her. With a sneering smile, the ZOMGAN leader claimed the Transcendent had gotten excited just because she matched her pace, but admitted it was still a good attempt. Lying on the ground and in pain, the girl from the Lethal Force unit seemed almost out of strength to go on. Her trembling, dirty hand revealed the wounds caused by the intense battle. In the girl's eyes, one could see the fear that was taking over her from within. As they approached the seated Senior Garam, Ji So-cheja and her sisters mocked her, and the ZOMGAN leader asked what game they should play next. Gripped by terror, the Transcendent screamed for the enemies to go away immediately. With the relentless advance of the ZOMGANs, the girl from the Lethal Force unit grew desperate, not knowing what to do. Amid the chaos, Senior Garam forced herself to think, remembering her promise to save the humans, and that she had to get up and find a way to win. Although she wanted to say all that out loud, her face showed pure terror, and deep inside she admitted she was very afraid. A pair of sneakers quietly appeared beside the fallen Transcendent, completely changing the atmosphere. Standing before her, the protagonist appeared and asked if she needed help, causing immense surprise. The captain's words came to the hero's mind, reminding him that he should help Senior Garam if the situation became critical. Looking at the boy's back, the girl thought that this should be easy for Mireille. She continued to reflect that the protagonist probably didn't feel intimidated and would do whatever it took to ensure the humans were rescued. Having that thought about her companion, Senior Garam concluded that it was enough for now and that she didn't need to keep fighting the ZOMGAN. A memory suddenly surfaced from when she was a child and a firefighter rescued her from a fire, the moment she decided to become a heroine. That day, while being carried out of the flames, little Garam thought there wasn't much difference between a child and an adult. Back in the present, the Transcendent realized that, just as she was terrified now, the firefighter must have been as well. As she continued reflecting, she understood that being a hero is a risky job, where not always someone comes to save you. While the ZOMGANs watched from afar, the Transcendent concluded that this was how someone is saved, and that she couldn't just stand there. Determination overtook her body, which began to glow with a green aura, enveloping the book as well, and she decided to act no matter the cost. With a scream full of effort, the girl from the Lethal Force unit unleashed an enormous amount of green energy from within. Surprised and excited, Ji So-cheja wondered if this was a new ability, and if she might fall in love with her again. With wide eyes, Dongo shouted Senior Garam's name, shocked by such a powerful display. Channeling the energy, the Transcendent thought that this idea had crossed her mind before. She remembered her ability to absorb knowledge and visualized the 3 martial arts manuals. A new possibility emerged in her thoughts. What would happen if she tried to absorb something beyond logic, like the book called Mountain Crushing Palm? As the green energy grew stronger, the question surfaced in her mind. What if she tried it anyway? With her body bent and power concentrating, the girl from the Lethal Force unit prepared to unleash a devastating attack. Upon noticing the activation of the transfer knowledge ability, the captain wore an expectant expression. A massive explosion of green energy erupted from Senior Garam in the direction of the ZOMGANs. Using all the strength she had, the Transcendent executed the technique called Mountain Crushing Palm. The 3 ZOMGANs were hit head-on and screamed in pain from the devastating impact. Ji So-cheja's expression showed intense agony as she was struck by the force of the new ability. With the violence of the blow, the red-haired girls were thrown far away. The leader of the ZOMGANs, watching the explosion from a distance, was completely stunned. Unable to hide her shock, Ji So-cheja wondered what that had been and thought she would have died if it had hit her directly. Now surrounded by a powerful green aura, Senior Garam questioned where the enemy had suddenly drawn so much power from and realized she had to leave before things got worse. Feeling pain all over her body, Senior Garam was aware of the toll the battle was taking on her. She thought her body felt like it was about to explode and knew that this ability could only last another 1 or 2 minutes. Facing the ZOMGANs, the Transcendent was aware she needed to end it quickly. With a playful air, Jisoo Cheojae praised her effort and said she was going home. As she turned away, she stated that, just for that day, she would spare the humans and see the beautiful lady again. Without hesitation, the girl from the Lethal Force unit launched an attack at the retreating ZOMGAN, asking where she thought she was going. Senior Garam declared it was time to end the game, while the ZOMGAN captain complained about her pretty face. Angrily, the ZOMGAN captain asked why she was being so arrogant and if she thought she was leading out of fear. As she attacked again, the ZOMGAN leader explained she was just being generous. Suddenly, the Transcendent was hit by shurikens that flew toward her. Confused, the ZOMGAN captain wondered why she was making that strange sound. With the green aura glowing, the girl from the Lethal Force unit counterattacked, and Jisoo Cheojae demanded to know who had asked for generosity. Screaming in anger, the ZOMGAN leader said the girl was making her furious. Wielding her star-shaped weapon, the ZOMGAN captain prepared to counterattack. With a firm voice, Jisoo Cheojae warned that this time she would fight seriously alongside her sisters. Launching the devastating attack called Meteor Shower, the ZOMGAN leader showed her strength. Still surrounded by the green aura, Senior Garam remained focused in the face of imminent danger. The mountain-crushing palm book appeared in her mind, reminding her of a fantasy novel based on Admiral Yi Sun-shin. In the story, the Admiral fought against the waves inside himself, using real tactics he liked to apply. 3 of those tactics had been adapted in the novel, and the first one was about to be used. From the great green energy emerged the technique called Jang Sejin, drawing a cry of surprise from the leader of the ZOMGANs. Ordering her sisters to go retrieve their beautiful stars, Jisoo Cheojae told Senior Garam not to copy her or chase after them either. With her body showing signs of failure from the effort, the girl from the Lethal Force unit realized she had to end it all with the next attack. The ZOMGAN captain watched the scene attentively, followed by a surprise exclamation and a playful remark. Leaping into the air, Senior Garam prepared to use the second tactic, prompting Jisoo Cheojae to ask if she was just showing off. Surrounded by a powerful green aura, the Transcendent then executed the technique Hongyuljin. A strong impact hit the ground, and the ZOMGAN captain smiled, assuming she was right about something. With the stance of someone dodging effortlessly, Jisoo Cheojae mocked the girl's obvious attack. Still in the air, the girl from the Lethal Force unit wondered who would actually be hit by that blow. Even in the face of the offensive, the 3 red-haired ZOMGANs managed to shield themselves, and the attack passed without causing any damage. Laughing loudly, the leader of the ZOMGANs sarcastically remarked that it had been a huge waste of power. Pointing with malice, Jisoo Cheojae said that Senior Garam was exposing her back so shamelessly. With a wicked smile, the ZOMGAN captain looked surprised when the Transcendent denied it. With an intense gaze and a blue glint deep in her eyes, the girl from the Lethal Force unit stated that she was showing her back on purpose. It was then revealed by the Transcendent that Hongyuljin was actually a carefully disguised retreat strategy. During the explanation, it became clear that Admiral Yi Sun-shin used this technique to simulate a retreat and lure the enemy before turning around and counterattacking. In the tactical panel presented, the diagram clearly showed how the famous admiral applied the maneuver in his naval battles. Next came the announcement of the so-called third tactic. Still suspended in the air, Senior Garam gathered her energy, forming 2 glowing green arcs around her. With the power on symbol shining in her eyes and consumed by fierce focus, the Transcendent prepared to unleash the final technique known as Heikikjin. With wide, intensely red eyes, the ZOMGAN sisters reacted to the green energy now taking over the field. During that clash, Senior Garam reflected on the true meaning of the word hero and tried to understand its essence. The figure of the protagonist appeared in her mind, representing what she called overwhelming power as one possible heroic trait. Then, the image of the young painter Min Song Kim took shape in her thoughts, symbolizing endless honor as another aspect of a hero. When a beam of intense light tore through the darkness, the Transcendent pondered that although these were valid characteristics, they alone weren't enough to define what it means to be a hero. Facing the ruined village, she thought that sometimes a hero acts moved only by their own conviction, even if to others it seems foolish. As she advanced among the wreckage, she reflected that this conviction demands knowing when one truly must take a risk. Suddenly, one of the pink-haired ZOMGANs attacked, letting out a sharp scream. A small projectile, similar to a needle, was fired at extremely high speed, leaving a thin trail in the air. On the ground, a dark and deep mark revealed the impact of the attack, showcasing its destructive potential. Amid growing tension, the children of the village desperately called for Garam, seeking protection. However, one of them stared at the girl from the Lethal Force unit with shining eyes, filled with admiration and hope. Even wounded and exhausted, the Transcendent remained standing, and in the eyes of the child, she became a true heroine. Getting closer to the girl, Dong-ho asked with concern if she was alright while the protagonist watched in silence. Turning with effort, she looked at her companions and the young painter as the boy repeated her name with anguish. With slow and trembling steps, Senior Garam began to walk away, leaving small dark stains on the ground with each movement. Not far from there, a white rosebud, perhaps the ranji flower they were searching for, began to softly bloom. Casting a glance over her shoulder toward the hero, the Transcendent commented with a faint smile that if it were him, he wouldn't have needed to go this far. The next moment, the young girl's strength seemed to completely run out, and her body collapsed as Dong-ho shouted her name in despair. At the same time she fell, the white rose bloomed fully. Suddenly, the villagers were stunned to see white flowers sprouting rapidly all across the ground. Exhausted, Senior Garam collapsed on her back over the field now covered in flowers. Lying among the roses, she looked at the protagonist and murmured, almost voiceless, if she was being pathetic. He remained silent for a few seconds, just staring at her. With firmness, he replied no, and that seemed to bring a subtle sense of relief to the girl from the Lethal Force unit. That's when Senior Garam asked if she could ask for help just that once, and doubt appeared on his face. Under an orange sky, the Transcendent revealed her simple and sincere request, asking for help to stand up. For a few seconds, the protagonist stood there silently, contemplating her request. Then he nodded affirmatively and calmly extended his hand. Senior Garam's hand met the hero's, and gently he pulled her up. A sincere, grateful smile appeared on the girl's face as she looked at the one who helped her. Among the blooming bushes, a fully open white rose seemed to symbolize a new beginning. Still holding her hand, the protagonist shared that quiet moment of companionship with her. With the smile lingering, Senior Garam thanked him from the heart for the help. As they walked together among the flowers, she asked if they could go slowly because she felt that this time she might really die, and he simply nodded. The young painter ran up to them and asked anxiously if Senior Garam was okay, noting that she looked even better than expected. Coughing up a dark liquid and with a pained expression, Min-sung Kim asked the girl to rest, but heard in return that she was the one who needed rest. Holding the girl from the Lethal Force unit by the shoulders, the suspicious heroine admitted that she couldn't even imagine what would have happened without everyone there, and Garam told her to get herself treated. From a short distance, Dong-ho watched silently while the young painter tearfully thanked them for being saved, and the Transcendent insisted she step back. Lost in his thoughts, Dong-ho wondered why he felt so useless compared to the help Garam had given everyone. The protagonist turned to Min-sung Kim and asked if that was really the flower they had been searching for, while the surroundings lit up with a glow. Seeing the vast field of radiant white flowers inside the cave, Dong-ho commented that there were far more than he imagined and wondered if the mysterious girl would allow them to take everything. Carrying the hero on her back, the suspicious heroine asked if the flowers were valuable because they tasted bland and seemed useless. With an injured face and teary eyes, Senior Garam thought with pride about the captain and affirmed that her commander, Jin Garam, had succeeded. Min-sung Kim ordered Dong-ho to quickly pack the flowers in the bag, and the boy obeyed while she said she'd be happy if it helped. The scene shifted to the sky where clouds passed quickly, suggesting the passage of time, or perhaps a change in location. Elsewhere, someone was digging forcefully with a shovel. Gathered before several mounds of earth, the villagers wore faces marked by exhaustion and sorrow, as if standing before freshly dug graves. Injured and bandaged, the young painter, Senior Garam, and the protagonist observed the scene somberly, while Dong-ho avoided looking directly. A larger mound of earth marked the place where the villagers' bodies had been buried. With a thoughtful and melancholic expression, the suspicious heroine stared at the forest in silence. Soon after, the villagers began tossing a child into the air, shouting joyfully that a hero had emerged. Min-sung Kim watched it all with a faint smile, though sadness still lingered in her eyes. Looking at Senior Garam, who seemed not to understand what she was seeing, the young painter let out a sigh. Dong-ho firmly announced to the villagers that they would now try to clean the village, while the young painter walked away beside the Transcendent and apologized. Garam then asked if Min-sung Kim and the others couldn't take refuge somewhere else, but the young girl didn't seem to grasp the idea. Pointing with a sense of urgency, the Transcendent indicated that there was a safe place not far from there. Our hero explained to the villagers that they would return as soon as possible to rescue them and asked them to stay temporarily in that improvised shelter. Worried about how long it would take, Senior Garam suggested that the protagonist transport one person at a time, but heard from Dong-ho that it might not be a good idea. With a map in hand, he explained that carrying people one by one would require too many trips, and if the ZOMGANs found out, the risk would be enormous. Given the situation, the girl from the Lethal Force unit proposed returning to headquarters to find a solution and inform the captain, a plan Dong-ho agreed with, while the protagonist hesitated. Standing still in the same spot, Dong-ho sparked Senior Garam's curiosity, as she wondered why he suddenly seemed so withdrawn. Apprehensively, one of the villagers asked if there really was a safe place nearby, and if they would come back for them, receiving only a confirming sound from the Transcendent. With a calm smile, the girl assured the villagers that they didn't need to worry and that they'd be back soon. Calling out to Min-son Kim, Senior Garam handed her an object, sparking the young painter's curiosity about what it was. It was a radio, as the Transcendent explained, asking the suspicious heroine to look after everyone until they returned, leaving the girl visibly surprised. On impulse, the young painter refused the radio, shouting that she couldn't accept that responsibility, which confused Senior Garam. Emotional, Min-son Kim revealed through tears that she didn't know how many more people would die because of her, because she wasn't a hero. Scared, she confessed to the girl from the Lethal Force unit that she lied out of fear and all she wanted was to run away. That was when Senior Garam asked who it was that ran toward the attack without thinking twice. With a tear on her face, the Transcendent reminded the young painter that she had acted the moment she heard the screams. The girl emphasized that even though she was afraid, Min-son Kim didn't run to save herself, and that showed her courage. Once again extending the radio, Senior Garam asked the suspicious heroine to protect the village until the team came back. With firmness, the girl from the Lethal Force unit declared that even with doubts, that girl was still the hero of the village. Her words were confirmed by the villagers, who said it was thanks to her that they were still alive. Faced with so many declarations, Min-son Kim was left speechless, overcome with emotion. Shortly after, she stepped away from Senior Garam and asked them to wait a moment, sparking the Transcendent's curiosity about where she was going and if she still felt unsure. Soon after, Min-son Kim appeared again, now carrying Senior Garam on her shoulders, and was questioned by the girl from the Lethal Force unit about where she had gone. Holding the Transcendent's hands with determination, the suspicious heroine declared that she would protect the villagers, completely surprising Senior Garam. Turning to the villagers, the young painter enthusiastically encouraged them to think of places where they could hide, while the girl from the Lethal Force unit wondered if she had suddenly changed personalities. With a shining look in her eyes, Min-son Kim thought this was much better than seeing her sad and powerless. Wasting no time, the suspicious heroine announced that it was time to act and began to run. Inspired, the villagers followed her with their arms raised and faces lit with hope. Watching from afar, Senior Garam, Donho, and the protagonist observed the scene with gentle smiles. With confidence in her gaze, Min-son Kim cast one last glance back before moving forward. Elsewhere, the hero silently gazed at the sky. In his mind appeared a memory from his childhood, sitting in a tree surrounded by white roses, holding one of them in his hands. Back in the present, a black hole appeared in the sky, as if reality were tearing open. Noticing who was approaching, Captain Lee Kyung showed surprise. Now bandaged but smiling, Senior Garam walked supported by the protagonist and Dongho, holding a glowing white flower. Satisfied, the leader smiled as she saw her team reunited once again. Since acquiring the Ranji flower, significant changes had taken place in the Dark Squadron's facilities. In the village, relief supplies and clothing were distributed thanks to the discovery of a large stockpile of resources. With help from professionals rescued from the slave farm, like construction and manufacturing specialists, rapid advancements were made. Besides the weapons they already had, the humans also began receiving military training. Commander Nuri explained that the remaining resources would be used efficiently, with a division of labor and an assembly for important decisions. As time passed like a giant moon over the city, everything evolved quickly. With firmness, Captain Lee Kyung told the team they had done an excellent job during that period. With confidence, she declared that all their efforts over the past months would not be in vain. Her determined gaze met the focused faces of the troops. Standing beside Dongho and Kyuha, she made an important announcement. Everyone listened attentively to her words. That was when she revealed that in 7 days, they would invade Changwon. The sky opened and blue and white clouds floated above, accompanied by a silence full of anticipation. Meanwhile, on a rocky island in the ocean, a stranded boat indicated the place known as Oryokdo Island. A ZOMGAN wearing a hat and carrying a sword on his back, who had come there to capture a slave, noticed that the island was disappearing. Confused, he let out a sigh and wondered what had happened in that place. Repeating to himself that he came in search of a slave, he now watched Oryokdo Island vanish before his eyes. Once again, the ZOMGAN sighed, unable to understand what had just happened. A small square device with green lights began to emit a sound, reporting that Oryokdo Island had been destroyed, leaving him in shock. The white-haired, strange-eyed female figure known as Nate Fesh, a rank 4, questioned what had happened to Ritual, hearing only a vague "who knows" from the hat-wearing ZOMGAN. While holding a mask and a small floating cue, the ZOMGAN reflected that with the fall of Oryokdo Island, Ritual certainly wasn't there anymore, which was cause for concern. With her long hair fluttering, Nate Fesh wanted to know if they needed to attend a chief's meeting and remarked she would rather continue with her experiments. She was told they wouldn't attend and wouldn't notify Terate, which sparked her curiosity. He explained that if Terate found out later, he would be furious, and asked if Nate Fesh could handle the consequences, to which she simply responded, "Fine." 4 glowing pieces floated around as Nate Fesh concluded that if she killed the humans, there would be consequences. Still on the ground, the glowing pieces Nate Fesh had summoned slowly fell around her. With her eyes on the scattered pieces, she reflected on the 4 years that had passed since the dawn of the Paradise Era. In that moment, she saw the perfect opportunity to polish her forgotten martial arts skills. As she pondered, a fiery explosion enveloped her, but she remarked that she didn't mind, as long as they didn't use fireworks on her. The hat-wearing ZOMGAN mentioned that Ji So-cheje had returned and had been attacked by humans, finding the situation odd. Curious about her whereabouts, the ZOMGAN heard that she was in Cheongsongsan, a mountain located in Yangsan. Upon seeing a burning city in the distance, the ZOMGAN looked toward the horizon and expressed hope that it would be something worthy of his expectations. At the base, with the massive moon in the background, Captain Lee Kyung firmly declared that the time had come. Excited, a girl with a microphone announced the start of the 3rd combined training session. Team Mirai would have the red flag and Team Rishiru the blue one, with victory going to whoever captured it first. Facing Team Rishiru, the protagonist and his allies stared down the executive ZOMGAN, who wondered who would win. The prize was announced as a box of shrimp crackers, the last remaining from Oryukdo Island. Next, the leaders were introduced: Choi Gyuho for Team Mirai, and Park Hoyeon for Team Rishiru with a request for readiness. Park Hoyeon began his speech by introducing himself as a well-known preschool teacher. Even though he could no longer pursue his old dream, he declared he would chase his new one with determination. After extensive analysis with clipboard in hand, he claimed to have created the best possible strategy and tactics. He revealed to his team, including the protagonist, that his ultimate mission was to boost everyone's confidence. With enthusiasm, he shouted that everyone there had brilliant talent and could achieve victory. Excited, one of the team members shouted that the shrimp crackers would be theirs, while Dongho watched in surprise. With wooden swords in hand, the members of Team Rishiru surrounded the protagonist, while their leader praised their radiance. Confused, Dongho shouted, accusing Park Hoyeon of copying, receiving the reply that there was no cowardice in competing with Mirai on the team. The girl with the microphone raised her arm and called for everyone's attention, announcing the start of the combined training. Rishiru leaped over the members of Team Mirai, who tried to strike him with wooden swords. A black-haired, red-eyed girl called the protagonist master and asked what they should do. Not understanding, he asked who she was, hearing that her name was Kim Hae-mi and that she was a big fan of Mirai. With determination, Kim Hae-mi launched herself into battle, saying she would handle it on her own. Still unsure who she was, the protagonist just watched confused. With 2 swords in hand and swift movements, Kim Hae-mi began taking down opponents with ease. She approached Rishiru and told him to look there, catching the ZOMGAN off guard. With a precise strike, Kim Hae-mi attacked Rishiru, who questioned who had given her permission to call him master. With glowing orange eyes, Rishiru declared that the master was his and ordered Kim Hae-mi not to interfere. The girl responded that the master wasn't an object and told the green raccoon to watch his own mouth. Irritated, the ZOMGAN shouted that the arrogant human bastard meant nothing to him. Covered in a purple aura, Rishiru attacked Kim Hae-mi, saying she still confused him with the former boss Rishiru. After striking Kim Hae-mi, he asked in surprise about the body she had mentioned. With hearts and bones in the background, Rishiru, now different and flushed, said the body had been made especially for him by the master. He went on to say he carried a piece of the master with him, and that a peasant girl like her would never understand that feeling. With a disgusted expression, Kim Hae-mi simply muttered that all of it was disgusting. From a distance, Captain Lee Kyung observed along with Commander Nuri and the girl with the microphone, asking what was going on. Nuri replied that perhaps, because she had been busy, the captain was unaware of the recent events. The commander asked if she remembered the recently supplied Ranja sword, unaware of its full influence. Nuri explained that after the distribution of the Ranja sword, people's physical abilities had drastically improved. She added that they now surpassed normal humans in power, and the best was yet to come. The best part was that people like Kim Hae-mi and a red-haired boy, who had awakened as superhumans, were now emerging. With a smile, the commander stated that they would gain a lot of labor for the plan, even if they weren't rivals to the captain or the protagonist. The leader enthusiastically commented that everyone had progressed since the beginning of their training, and that more allies would arrive soon to enhance their plans. As she observed Kim Hae-mi attacking Rishiru, Captain Lee Kyung was surprised by the boy's usefulness and reflected on whether his current condition was the reason for his lack of fear. With a wooden sword in hand, Hyuha shouted with determination that he would also work hard and no longer wanted to be a burden. At that moment, he was struck on the head and let out a groan of pain. Other members were also suffering the impacts during the intense training with wooden swords. Firmly, the protagonist held the flag. Soon after, he began to run with it while Park Hoyeon watched in shock. Choi Gyuho cheered excitedly, representing Team Mirai, while Park Hoyeon shouted in confusion, wondering why the boy was participating in common training if he was considered a cheater. With Kim Haney by his side, Ritual commented that the master was amazing, and the black-haired girl shouted that that was her master. The girl with the microphone announced the end of the training with another victory for Team Mirai, and said that Team Rishuru needed to catch up. While the protagonist was tossed into the air surrounded by packets of shrimp crackers, Captain Lee Kyung questioned Commander Nuri about the tests, and she responded vaguely. The commander explained that she had tried various methods but still couldn't discover the root cause. As she observed the protagonist lying down, she concluded that the perfect death was still a mystery. Approaching the leader, the commander asked her to come along that day, which surprised the captain, who wanted to know if something was wrong. Nuri replied that she had a special mission and needed the protagonist's help, and the scene soon showed the boy lying in a medical chair with her beside him. As she administered an injection into the boy's arm, she informed him that it was MF250, with an estimated mortality rate of 0.00052%. With a gentle smile, she wished the protagonist a good night's sleep. The boy replied that he wished for the same. In silence, he reflected on what it would be like to have a dream. On the heart monitor, his vital signs appeared normal but had a strange rhythm. Watching the boy lying down, Captain Lee Kyung thought that if the test kept failing, it would be difficult to earn his trust. She reflected that for the upcoming missions, she would need Mirai's help. The only way to gain the boy's cooperation would be to awaken his dormant humanity. In front of the computer, Commander Nuri remained silent for a few seconds. She then asked the protagonist if he felt anything different, and he replied that he didn't, to which she simply said that she understood. Upon analyzing the results of MF250, the commander concluded that there were no abnormal reactions, neither in vital signs nor physically. With a serious expression, Captain Lee Kyung concluded that experiment number 250 had been yet another failure. At that moment, they heard knocks at the door. When it opened, a woman and a little girl seemed very surprised to see the protagonist. With a calm look, the young man asked the woman if something had happened. The woman then grabbed a few boxes of curry from the shelf. Sitting at the table while the little girl watched curiously, the woman asked if Captain Lee Kyung had requested the boy's help, and he confirmed. With sparkling eyes, the little girl asked if that meant they would spend the whole day together, and the woman thought that there wasn't really anything planned. Suddenly, the woman had an idea and exclaimed excitedly that that was it. With a cheerful smile, she suggested that they make curry together, leaving the protagonist surprised. As they walked together, the woman reminded the young man of the wish she had shared back at the camp, saying she wanted to cook for him. She explained that she was thinking of preparing something in the kitchen and asked the boy to fetch the necessary ingredients for the curry. Walking alongside the little girl, the protagonist heard her comment that they would need carrots and wondered where they could find them. Curious, the little girl asked if he had seen any carrots anywhere in the village. Elsewhere, Senior Giram used the radio and asked if Min-song Kim was listening, and the young painter confirmed that she was. Over the radio, the Transcendent said that after the Changwon plan, they could come pick her up, and Min-song Kim asked what that was about. The girl from the Lethal Force unit replied that the plan would probably happen next week. Suddenly, knocks on the door interrupted the conversation, and Senior Giram asked Min-song to wait. When she opened the door, she was met by the protagonist and the little girl, who smiled and asked if there were carrots in that house. Confused, the young woman from the Lethal Force unit asked why they were looking for carrots there, and the little girl, disappointed, replied that the boy had just arrived. Perplexed, Senior Giram asked if the protagonist was the one who did that, and he remained silent. The Transcendent then wanted to know why he was asking her, of all people, for carrots. It turned out that her hair looked very much like a carrot. Even so, the boy kept pointing in her direction, asking for carrots. Out of patience, the Transcendent told them to leave, saying she was busy, and the two were kicked out of the house. With a discouraged expression, the little girl remarked that they had been kicked out and wondered where else they could look for carrots. Spotting a man carrying a sack, she approached and asked if he knew where there were carrots, and he said yes. Amazed, Heian gazed at something that looked like a vast blue ocean. Soon after, a field full of carrots planted in neat rows appeared before her eyes. With a carrot in hand, the protagonist asked the man if he had been growing them for a long time, and he confirmed it, saying it was his way of contributing to society. The man explained that it had been hard to grow them there, and that was why they only had small carrots, but that he could take them if they wanted. Happy, Heian smiled while the boy took the opportunity to grab lots of carrots. Curious, the girl asked if he also grew potatoes by any chance, and the man said no, which left her a little disappointed. With a smile, the man said he had heard there was something like potatoes swimming in the ocean, surprising the little girl as he suggested she go check it out. With her gaze lost in the sky, the little girl reflected on the idea of visiting the ocean. At the facility, Commander Nuri suggested diving suits and received a nod of agreement from the little one. With a curious tone, Nuri commented that there might be useful materials and wanted to know if they had a clear destination on this mission. The explanation came lightly, like a joke, with Heian talking about swimming potatoes and plans to catch them. With a firm step at the door, Shoei appeared, announcing his return and exchanging greetings with the little ones. During the conversation, Gyuho wanted to know why Nuri was there, but the cheerful answer came from the little girl. At the bottom of the sea, small oxygen bubbles rose to the surface as the adventure began. Already geared up, the three divers glided through the water, while Heian dreamed of memories alongside the hero. Out of nowhere, Donghua signaled underwater, drawing attention to something surprising. With amazement in her eyes, Heian pointed at a curious fish that looked like a potato, and Donghua speculated it might be a mutant. Full of energy, the little girl suggested capturing it, and our hero agreed with the idea as Donghua watched. In an instant, a gigantic creature appeared with enormous teeth, ready to devour the small potato fish. Shock overtook the three of them, who seemed insignificant in the face of the monstrous being. With fear in his voice, Donghua shouted that the potato fish had been mercilessly swallowed. Still underwater, Donghua pointed at the predator and its signs of old battles. A torn piece of its fin suggested a turbulent past and indicated that the fish was the sovereign of the ocean. More menacing than ever, the monster charged toward the divers, and Donghua warned the hero about the attack. Before anything could happen, a new creature emerged before them with astonishing speed. Not quite understanding what he was seeing, our hero froze in place before the presence of the yellow beast. For a long time, that enormous fish believed itself invincible under the water. But in that moment, fear appeared in its eyes at the sight of the new rival. A jet of water exploded from the depths, launching the boy to a nearby cliff. With no other choice, he had jumped with everything he had and now stood tall atop the rock. From up there, the fish could feel the power the boy carried in his gaze. So great was the impact that the monster fainted from sheer emotion and terror. Stunned, Donghua could barely believe it as he watched the hero bring down the creature with such ease. With a gleam in her eyes, Heian declared that this was exactly what she expected from him. At the base, a curious woman wanted to know if the children had already returned and if Gyuho had come back as well. With the unusually large size of the fish, attention was drawn from all around, and soon the residents gathered to help carry it while the woman in charge of cooking wondered what was going on with all those people. Because of that, the woman named Jizin had to prepare an immense amount of curry and, overwhelmed, asked for help to get out of the situation. In the end, the dish was served in a rush, and as the narrator said, it seemed to be the worst ever seen. With some hesitation, Gyuho thanked her for the meal while the protagonist and Heian tasted the curry with disgusted expressions. The residents who tried it also felt repulsed, and one even asked if that was really supposed to be curry. Through tears, Jizin wondered if coming here had been a mistake, recalling that she had claimed she could cook and asking what they wanted her to do. Trying to cheer up the protagonist, Gyuho said it wasn't even that bad and quickly remembered that he wasn't used to eating properly. The boy remained silent while a memory of his mother came to his mind. In the memory, his mother said that no matter what happened, he couldn't stop eating and that she would always be watching. The wooden spoon he held brought back the taste of the food she used to make. But in the end, what remained was only destruction. Even after so many years, every time he tried to eat, that scene came back with force. And that brought sadness. Then his hand opened, and so the chocolate bar he was holding ended up falling. Back at the table with his friends, he decided to try the carrot dish. Everyone there was in shock, and Gyuho commented that he had never seen the protagonist eat before, asking what it tasted like. For a moment, the boy remained quiet, lost in his thoughts. Then he responded that it tasted bad, and Gyuho burst out laughing. Shouting, Gyuho told Jizin what the boy had said, and she, irritated, replied that she already knew and told him to shut up. Our hero remained seated in silence, his eyes fixed on the plate in front of him. Also sitting at the table, Captain Lee Kyung looked pleased. She knew well that that moment carried great meaning for him. Tasting the curry, the leader made a face and wondered what it was supposed to be. Over the radio, Senior Garon called for Min-song Kim, wanting to know if she and the residents of the shelter were okay. On the other side, amidst the flames, the hat-wearing ZOMGAN heard the message that said it would happen soon and that they just needed to wait a little longer. While reading lying down, the young woman from the Lethal Force unit was surprised by a voice on the radio saying everything seemed boring and asking who she was. The mysterious voice mentioned a plan in Changwon that had already been referenced, saying they planned to infiltrate in secret. That's when the hat-wearing ZOMGAN declared that he would shut down all defense shields and invited whoever was on the other end to meet him in person. Holding the radio, Senior Garam replied that both of them knew martial arts and asked him not to be so rude. Then the ZOMGAN asked if it was Yerier and said he would be waiting for her. In a leap, Nate Fesh appeared, stomping on the ground and shouted at the hat-wearing ZOMGAN, demanding to know what he had done to Min-song. With trembling hands holding the radio, Garam was deeply shaken and couldn't say anything. Even with an injury on her face, she forced a smile and tried to encourage someone, saying not to worry, they would definitely return. But fear suddenly took over and she screamed, saying that this couldn't be happening. In another room, Captain Lee Kyung, our hero, and Ritual looked at Garam as he said the name Urier. He said that Urier wanted to get stronger, but his way of seeking strength was different from his, and that's why they'd have fought a lot. He also said that Urier was the only one who talked about fighting, and the leader grew concerned, stating that this was a problem because the plan had been exposed. Turning to leave, Garam said she was going away, and the captain asked if she was okay. As she left, Ritual commented to the leader that it had been a surprise. He thought Garam would be crying because the residents had died because of her, but he realized she wasn't weak. Captain Lee Kyung agreed, saying that Garam knew what a proper revenge looked like. Garam's footsteps moved away from where they had been talking. Angrily, she squeezed the radio tightly until it broke. Looking at a whiteboard full of notes, Garam, holding her chopsticks, said that this looked good. Observing the plan, she concluded that the first idea wasn't solid after all. Looking at the base, Garam thought that since food would soon run out and space was limited, she had tried to make the plan work even though she knew from the start it wouldn't be easy. Holding her chopsticks in hand, Senior Garam explained that the real issue was the lack of information they had. Despite all the searches they had made, they had only discovered one single thing about Changwon. They only knew that the place had been built with very tall walls and nothing beyond that. Walking across a barren area, the Transcendent lamented that they had no way of knowing how many internal workers were there and said any plan they created would be like shooting in the dark. Pointing at the board with her chopsticks, the girl asked what would happen if the door opened at that point and they no longer had to worry about the lack of information. Captain Lee Kyung asked Ritual if there was any chance that Urier was lying, and he replied that he didn't think so because that rascal was completely insane. Spinning the chopsticks between her fingers, Senior Garam calculated that in a direct battle of powers, their chances of losing were 0%. Since Urier was going to open the door for them willingly, the Transcendent concluded that there was no reason to refuse the offer. With his face slightly blushing, Ritual said it was intense and wondered how exciting it would be this time, but reminded himself that he had to stay by the master's side. With her back turned to the group and facing the board, the leader asked where the protagonist was, and Captain Lee Kyung replied that now that she thought of it, she hadn't seen him that day and said she would go look for him. Upon finding our hero with a bucket in his hands, Jizun asked what he was doing there, and the young man stayed silent, leaving her surprised. Jizun explained that she had gone there to throw away the curry, the same one he had eaten the day before, and he remembered that. Crying, the woman lamented that she had put in so much effort only to hear that the taste was bad, said she shouldn't have tried so hard, and explained that she had wandered around trying to find a place to throw the leftovers away. With a sharp eye, the protagonist noticed the uniform she was carrying and asked if that wasn't the uniform. Jizun wanted to know why he wasn't wearing the uniform, since she saw everyone else wearing it, and our hero replied that it was because he didn't want to, leaving her confused. Not knowing what to think, the woman then asked why he was carrying the uniform with him, and the young man remained silent, reflecting. Sitting on the ground, the protagonist was approached by Jizun, who asked if something had happened. Looking at the curry pot, he replied that he didn't know. Our hero said that up to that point, he had always felt a sense of emptiness. Now that he was surrounded by so many people, it felt like something inside him was beginning to change. Jizun paused in thought and said that she didn't know either. She mentioned that sometimes she was afraid of being around people and didn't know why. The woman explained that he didn't want to seem like he was there to find hope, and because of that, he felt guilty. Calling him by name, Jizun told him he didn't need to think that way. Sitting under a tree, she commended to the young man that he was creating memories he could tell his mother about. With a smile on her face, Jizun joked that if all he ever said was about fighting zombies all the time, his mom would probably get bored. Captain Lee Kyung, now in military uniform, asked the hero to tell his mother where he had been, what he had done, and who he had met. He remembered when he met Juho and the great conversations they had, and also remembered the tough moments he went through with Garam and Dongo. With a gentle smile, Jizun said that if she were his mother, she would feel happy for him. The young man lowered his head in thought as the sunlight filtered through the leaves of the trees, casting shadows on his face. At night, the protagonist walked quietly near the place where Jizun was sitting. He was thinking about the curry dish he had eaten earlier. With his back to the woman, our hero remarked that the taste wasn't that bad after all. Jizun watched the young man walk away while the bucket of curry remained by her side. A green energy began to emanate from somewhere, floating softly through the air. With arms crossed, Captain Lee Kyung observed the green energy with a faint smile on her face. On the floor of her room, Senior Garam remained seated in meditation, surrounded by an intense aura of green and yellow. holding a kind of colorful card. Kim Hae-mi thought that the distinguished ember had begun to ignite like a fuse, and that the small steps of humans had started a grand journey. 1 week later, at the ZOMGAN training field in Changwon, someone with a purple aura stomped forcefully on the ground. Human silhouettes were slowly approaching. Captain Lee Kyung's team appeared, and ZOMGAN showed excitement at the arrival of the humans. Kim Hae-mi asked about the protagonist, explaining that the master couldn't cross over due to his power. The leader calculated that if they departed together, the hero would arrive with a 12-second delay. A ZOMGAN with a green aura and red eyes charged forward screaming, saying he had been waiting for that moment for a week. Another ZOMGAN with red eyes and green aura declared he would devour the humans and mentioned Uriel's order to leave nothing behind. The scene showed the Changwon Control and Command Center, a towering building with a bamboo forest planted on its rooftop. A small pink device notified Uriel of the human's presence at the main entrance, and this caught him by surprise. Balanced on the tip of his sword in the middle of the bamboo forest, Uriel pondered how long the humans had taken to arrive. Initially, he thought it would take an hour, but since he had sent out the captains, he concluded it would take at least 3 hours. A lower-ranked ZOMGAN shouted for them to leave. Tresh Kong, captain number 2 of the Changwon Defense Squad, a muscular ZOMGAN with horns, reprimanded the others for their lack of manners at the table. Trampolin de Hierro, captain number 1, a ZOMGAN with glasses and flamethrowers, warned about the dangers of eating too fast and said the operation would begin after warming up. Historia Komika, captain of the chemistry team, a ZOMGAN with a gas mask and straitjacket, wanted to know who had defeated Ji So Choja and announced he would face that enemy first. A countdown began as the captain stood at the center. At number 2, the sky was torn open by dark portals. At number 1, a beam of white light struck the ground with force. Captain Lee Kyung confirmed everything was ready. From behind, the protagonist arrived at the exact moment. The captain wished the hero good luck. With a serious look, the young man responded firmly. At the control center, Uriel wondered if the humans would take 6 or 7 hours, and whether they could even get through the main entrance. Still standing atop his sword, the ZOMGAN appeared confused. On the screen, a message reported that 336 ZOMGANs from the Changwon Defense Squad had been completely wiped out. Across the entire city, explosions spread, and it was revealed that the distance between the barricade and the control center was 3.2 kilometers, with 678 ZOMGANs killed along that path. Balanced on the blade, Uriel watched as the protagonist approached at extreme speed. All the destruction had happened in just 3 seconds. Wide-eyed, the ZOMGAN stared at the hero rushing toward him, unable to believe what he was seeing. Unable to understand how it happened so fast, Uriel tried to put the pieces together. Looking to the side, he tried to figure out who had done that, and when they had arrived. In an instant, he was hit with a strong punch to the face. Without warning, the protagonist had landed a powerful uppercut that launched him into the air. Midair, stunned and shocked, the ZOMGAN recognized his attacker. With his fist clenched, the hero stared at him in silence. Uriel wanted to know if he was the human responsible for everything, and commented on his impressive entrance. Adjusting his clothes with irritation, the ZOMGAN complained about the ambush and said it was disrespectful to martial artists. The hero kept his gaze low as Uriel asked if he had entered through the main gate and lamented the loss of his men. With glowing orange eyes, the ZOMGAN reflected on whether those had really been Changwon's best and why no one had detected the human presence. Even watching the hero appear lost, Uriel doubted his strength, thinking the whole thing was some ridiculous act. Suddenly, the young man appeared right in front of the ZOMGAN, who was holding a mask, and was left speechless at the speed. The protagonist's fist stopped just centimeters from Uriel's face, freezing him in place. With a direct and precise strike, the hero hit him hard and sent him flying. As he flew shocked, the ZOMGAN thought he hadn't even noticed the moment of the attack and that everything had happened in under a second. In the reflection of his eye, the punch still gleamed as Uriel realized he hadn't seen a thing. Falling beside his sword, the ZOMGAN admitted to himself that everything had seemed pretty convincing so far. With his eyes fixed on the hero, he acknowledged that the young man had truly eliminated all his men. As the protagonist approached, the hat-wearing ZOMGAN asked if he knew why Changwon wasn't sealed and if he felt anything about it. Showing his bony fingers in glowing pieces, Uriel said he had left everything that way in case he found someone stronger. He confessed that if he could, he would dedicate everything to martial arts, and then the pieces fell to the floor. Amid the rising flames, he wondered if he could forget everything from the past, and whether he even wanted to forget. A revelation of power manifested as the flames of Yet engulfed the hero and the ZOMGAN. In the midst of the fire, the protagonist only muttered "forgive" with a confused expression. Surprised by the flames and the young man's reaction, Uriel questioned what he was witnessing. With seriousness in his eyes, the hero asked if he knew where he was, which left him even more disoriented. Suspicious, the ZOMGAN thought that the intruder hadn't come there because of him and might have entered by accident. In a fit of rage, The hat-wearing ZOMGAN clenched his teeth and cursed loudly. He shouted that he had no idea about the human's superpowers and that all of this had to have a limit. Stating his identity, Urier introduced himself while the young man asked if he was serious and apologized for the intrusion. With a disinterested tone, he said he had nothing against him and threw him hard against the bamboos. With a groan of pain, Urier felt the weight of the impact. Captain Lee Kyung ordered everyone to enter through the path the hero had taken and to infiltrate the interior. As planned, she declared that they would rescue the humans. A map appeared, showing the strategy to proceed eastward from the main gate to rescue the humans kept as slaves. The leader put Senior Giram in charge of the mission, and the girl confirmed while running. Wielding her sword, the captain prepared to move toward the guard post ahead of the supercluster, a structure built over water. In the tower with a glowing top, 2 ZOMGAN guards wondered what was happening and whether they should investigate, but one of them said they should wait for orders. Without warning, a barrage of attacks hit them, causing injuries and confusion. The captain appeared in the air with her rifle in hand. Upon observing the spherical structure, she recognized the supercluster located in the center of Changwon, just as Ritual had described. Landing on a platform, she thought that at this rate, the city would be inactive for 3 months. She then decided to leave the hero in charge from that point on. A revelation of power caused a strong green aura to envelop the captain. With determination, she explained that her power was different from what people thought. She said she could amplify all human senses like sight, hearing, pain, smell, taste, strength, gravity, endurance, and agility. Focusing on vision, which posed the least risk, she confirmed her choice. With eyes glowing green, she activated sensory amplification to 580%. With that, she managed to cover nearly the entire territory. Kneeling with her swords in hand, she declared that no attack would go unnoticed. Meanwhile, a ZOMGAN guard attacked the protagonist, asking if he had any idea how bold he was being. Even in pain, the young man dodged swiftly. Surprised, the ZOMGAN couldn't understand how that was possible. A green aura surrounded the hero, and several silhouettes of him appeared around. With glowing eyes, he stated that from then on, no human would die under his watch. In the laboratory, 2 beeps interrupted Nate Fesh, who wondered who was calling her in the middle of her experiment. A cube-shaped device with green details reported that 2 errors had been detected, and that the energy preserved in the second monitor was being transmitted, leaving Nate Fesh confused. As she wondered if those were the errors she was searching for, a ZOMGAN in a purple protective suit appeared, calling her name and surprising her. With glowing pink eyes, the ZOMGAN reported that humans had invaded the barracks of Changwon and asked for orders. Wearing a mask that covered part of her face, Nate Fesh cursed Urier, reminding herself she had already told him to avoid causing trouble. Suspecting that the errors were linked to the humans, she saw an opportunity. With a green aura in her hands, she announced the activation of the defense protocol. Amid holographic screens, she activated her power and initiated the Pinset offer system. She ordered the mobilization of the troops for defense, informing that full activation would take time, and the ZOMGAN confirmed. Calling for Bixie, the cube asked who should receive the emergency alert. The person in question was a powerful swordsman, Terate. In the chaos, a ZOMGAN guard was struck in the head. Panting, Senior Giram commented that there were too many enemies. She thought they needed to act fast to rescue the humans, and that the moment was critical. A ZOMGAN guard attacked, shouting for the humans to die, and she reacted in surprise. The man who cultivated carrots appeared, landing a punch on the enemy and saving Giram. With a wink and a smile, he said she didn't need to thank him, just buy his carrots next time. She thanked him, shouted, and leaped to face the ZOMGANs, telling the others to move forward. Giram laughed, remembering that just days ago, the humans had been terrified of the mission. While the humans trained with wooden swords, Senior Giram reflected that even with training, the suffering they had endured made it hard to believe they could defeat the ZOMGANs. With wide eyes, he admitted he thought he wouldn't be useful, but was surprised to see a human dodge an attack and shout that he could see the enemy's movements. Surprised, the ZOMGAN guard questioned the strength of the humans, who were now honorary members of the Dark Squadron. Shaking her head, Giram scolded herself, telling herself not to panic and to focus on saving everyone. A man in an orange vest ordered a swap between Team 88 and Team 102 as children in uniform passed through the security unit. Another sweaty man with a towel on his shoulder told someone to stop wasting time and hurry up. Getting no reply, he called out to Ms. Hansel and Yuna, telling them the boys were there and wishing them good work. He then called for Jongseok and Jangan, saying their uncle was there, and the boys stopped confused. He greeted the boys and asked why they hadn't responded. The boy with glasses explained that since they were only called by codes, they didn't know it was for them. He commented that maybe they had forgotten their names, and the man went silent. He replied that even if they forgot, he would always be there to call them by their names. With a sad expression, the boy said that wouldn't change anything because the ZOMGANs would continue using codes as if they were machines. He asked what the point of living like that was, and whether it wouldn't be better to just die. Jangan then asked if he knew why they used codes, and his friend asked him to repeat it. Jangan explained that the ZOMGANs didn't age or get sick, but humans changed, evolved, and improved. The man with the towel stepped closer and said that Jangan himself had once said they were turning into machines, and that's exactly what the ZOMGANs wanted. He went on, saying the ZOMGANs wanted to erase their names, strip away their human traits, and treat them like pets. With a solid punch to the wall, he declared that the ZOMGANs were afraid of the true potential of humans. Placing his hands on the boy's shoulders, he said that as children they had to live, no matter what. Looking up at the blue sky dotted with clouds, he said they had to hold on until their potential could blossom. He'd hugged both of them tightly, promising that one day their time would come. Emotional, the boys hugged him back, and he assured them everything would be okay. Suddenly, a girl appeared, calling everyone to follow her, leaving the children surprised and unsure of who she was. Senior Garam appeared with a defeated ZOMGAN behind her, shouting for them to run with her, shocking the children into thinking she had actually killed a ZOMGAN. She asked them to follow her despite their doubts, saying they were there to save them, while the man and the boys hesitated, suspicious it might be a trap. Someone's foot suddenly stepped forcefully on a thin cord on the ground, revealing surprise. The man with the towel warned with concern that the place was dangerous, and no one should go that way. ZOMGAN guards appeared and attacked the fleeing humans, heightening the tension. The man shouted, explaining that the humans were truly fighting against the ZOMGANs and trying to save them. Gripped by hope, the prisoners asked if it was true, and began to run, shouting that they would be slaves no more. He shouted for Jongseok and Jangan to run, and the boys responded that they already were. He then asked Senior Garam to take care of the children and the others, catching her off guard with the responsibility. Upon hearing that, she realized she didn't know who he was but saw his bravery and shouted for him to hurry because she was about to leave. With a book in his hands, the man smiled softly, thinking that the day had finally come when he could read it. He raised his gaze, confused, as if something were falling from the sky. A green eye lit up, and a message announced activation of the defense protocol with the objective of capturing humans. Green beams fell from the sky, striking the ground with force. Alarmed, Senior Garam wondered what that was. The man with the towel looked up and saw large chunks of concrete falling. With wide eyes and sweating, he showed concern about the destruction. Kneeling in an intense green light, Captain Lee Kyung appeared. Confused, she looked to the side as she saw a large explosion in the distance. In the sky, large white objects with green accents appeared, resembling enormous cloth spins. These objects began to fire, causing multiple orange explosions on the ground. A wave of green energy struck one of the team members, and he screamed in pain. At the last second, Captain Lee Kyung saved him, and the young man thanked her, relieved. With green glowing eyes featuring a circular pattern, the leader observed the scene. What were those flying clippers, and were they targeting humans? She wondered. From the investigation rooms, the energy was coming. Captain Lee Kyung realized. Nate Fesh must be on the move, she concluded. With her sword, Kim Haney ordered them to hide and move only within the buildings, and the team member confirmed. Although she wanted to find Nate Fesh, the leader thought she needed to protect the people and thus had no choice. Calling Senior Garam, who responded in surprise, Captain Lee Kyung asked if the Transcendent could handle the situation. With wide, shocked eyes, the girl from the Lethal Force unit asked if the leader wanted her to face a boss, but the captain told her not to worry and said she would support her. Feeling the pressure of time, Senior Garam said she would do what she could, and the leader thanked her. She showed a map with the location of Nate Fesh at the investigation barracks, and Captain Lee Kyung confirmed that was where they needed to go. With a swift movement, Ji So Che blocked Senior Garam's path and asked where she was going, calling her little sister. Covered in green slime and with glowing red eyes, the ZOMGAN captain said they had unfinished business. Shocked, the Transcendent could only let out a scream. With a piercing gaze, the ZOMGAN captain asked if the girl remembered her, stating of course she did. The captain screamed that she had lost everything because of Senior Garam, her pretty face and her friends. Floating in the air and surrounded by a green aura, the ZOMGAN leader declared she would make the Transcendent become like her. The two sisters of Ji So Che attacked the girl from the Lethal Force unit, and the ZOMGAN captain asked where she thought she was going. Sweating and in pain, the girl thought that she needed to get to the investigation barracks quickly. Over the radio, Senior Garam desperately called for Captain Lee Kyung, asking if she could hear her. She said something unexpected had happened and asked for help, while the leader, elsewhere, asked what that unexpected thing was. To the Transcendent, the ZOMGAN captain asked who she was talking to and warned her not to take her eyes off her. Seeing Captain Lee Kyung nearby, the girl from the Lethal Force unit said she didn't know what was going on, but thought she needed help and called her leader. With a terrifying and transformed face, Ji So Che asked who that was and told them to get lost. With a blast of green energy, Captain Lee Kyung attacked the ZOMGAN leader. She struck the ground with a powerful, swift, and precise move, destroying the area around the leader. To Senior Garam, The captain said not to worry because she would send reinforcements through Hamey, and the Transcendent asked if she wasn't going to fight with her. The leader explained that she needed to protect the humans and didn't have time to stay there. Help would arrive soon, she said, and told the girl to hurry to the investigation barracks. Confused, Senior Garam wondered if they had reinforcements because she thought everyone had already been brought there. From the ground, a green, muscular creature emerged, roaring in fury, making the Transcendent look on in surprise. Covered in green slime and with glowing eyes, the ZOMGAN captain Jisoo Chejae asked who that damn person was and called out for them to come, saying she would finish them both. Frightened by the threat, Senior Garam thought she needed reinforcements quickly. Suddenly, a giant bone wrapped in a purple aura appeared, and a loud sound accompanied its arrival. Smiling and with flushed cheeks, Rishul appeared in his transformed form, laughing loudly. Surprised and not understanding what was happening, the Transcendent looked at him. With bones protruding from his body, the ZOMGAN executive shouted while charging forward. With a cheerful smile and blushing face, Rishul announced that he had already arrived. He struck a funny pose, and Jisoo Chejae, surprised, asked if it was really him, Rishul. Then the ZOMGAN captain asked if it was him, saying he looked terrible, and Rishul replied that that was her opinion and asked how she had ended up like that. Arriving at a run, Choi Gyuho asked Senior Daram if she was okay, and she replied yes, but wanted to know if they were the reinforcements. Excited, Gyuho confirmed they were and showed a device on Rishul's neck. He explained that he could use it to control that punk, showing a remote control with a little fish drawn on it, and said Rishul had promised to obey and that they were there to help. Skeptical, the Transcendent asked if it was true, and if that stick figure man could actually help. Even so, the girl from the Lethal Force unit said she would count on them because she had somewhere else to go, and Gyuho said to leave it to him. In her gooey form, Jisoo Chejae asked Senior Garam where she was going, reminding her she would pay for what she had done. A sharp object was thrown, and Haeyoung cried out in surprise. Now lying down and looking calmer, Rishul told the Transcendent to go, that he would take care of it, and she asked him not to act all-powerful with that body. Running, Senior Garam was followed by the surprised ZOMGAN captain, who asked what that was as she looked at the transformed Rishul. With a face full of scars and glowing red eyes, the ZOMGAN captain asked Rishul if he was helping the humans. With a serious look, the ZOMGAN executive replied that somehow it had ended up that way and asked her not to take it personally. Surrounded by a purple aura, the ZOMGAN captain Jisoo Chejae said she had heard that Rishul was lifeless and that it was surprising to see him now as a little obedient dog to the humans. The ZOMGAN executive told her to stop interfering, and Jisoo Chejae was surprised. The ZOMGAN captain attacked Rishul, calling him by name. He asked her if she knew the difference between high-level and mid-level ZOMGANs, and Jisoo Chejae, confused, said that high-level ones were stronger. The ZOMGAN executive asked what she was, and she replied, mid-level. He then asked about himself, and she answered, high-level. With glowing red eyes, Rishul said that even though he was conscious, she had the guts to face him. He was going to continue speaking, but was interrupted by a blow from Jisoo Chejae, who said he talked too much. The impact caused a small smoke explosion. Watching the scene, Choi Gyuho grew worried, wondering if this would become a problem. Lying on the ground, Rishul wondered when he had become so weak and admitted he never imagined that just fighting humans would bring him to this point. Behind Senior Garam, Jisoo Chejae ran, and Gyuho realized the Transcendent was being chased. Pointing the remote, Gyuho shouted for Rishul to get her. The ZOMGAN executive began glowing yellow as he screamed, and Gyuho, in a panic, yelled to shut off the remote. With an awkward smile, Gyuho apologized, saying he didn't know the remote did that. Seeing Rishul flying, Jisoo Chejae asked if he was seeing this, and said she had no other choice. Spinning her arms like propellers, she yelled for him to go to hell while Gyuho, terrified, begged Rishul to do something. In pain, the ZOMGAN executive said he couldn't, that it was too much for his weak body, and Jisoo Chejae screamed at the human to release the medicine. Desperate, Gyuho shouted that he couldn't, that it was only to be used in emergencies, just as Anne had said. Slamming hard into the ground, Rishul transformed, and Gyuho was shocked. With the ground cracked around him, the ZOMGAN executive stated they were in the middle of a crisis, and that if Gyuho didn't let him use it, both of them would die. Gyuho yelled for Rishul to use anything he could to stop her, but the ZOMGAN executive, with a smile, asked if he really thought he would let him use it. Still lying down, Rishul asked if Gyuho wanted to run and meet the master, leaving the boy confused by the question. With glowing eyes, Rishul explained that only if he took that medicine and defeated Jisoo Chejae would he be able to see the master, even if just for a second before dying. As the humans fought the ZOMGAN guards, Rishul said they needed help now and asked what would happen if they died while still chasing that brat. Gyuho remained silent, thinking about what Rishul had said. After reflecting, he agreed, and holding a small orange pill, told Rishul to use it to save the humans, making it clear that he wasn't giving it because he wanted to see a hero. The little orange fish attached to Rishul's collar floated to his mouth, and he exclaimed that it was time. An intense red light burst from the ZOMGAN executive's body as he started to scream in pain, or maybe in transformation. Shocked, Juho watched as Rishul's body twisted and changed, covered in red energy. More muscular now, with a red feathered collar, Rishul shouted excitedly as tentacles emerged from his back. Surprised, Juho said that Rishul had really gotten his body back and told him to go after that ZOMGAN. With a serious gaze and glowing red eyes, Rishul remained silent for a moment. Before leaving, he said he needed to do something first. Scared, Juho thought Rishul was going to betray them, thinking that you really couldn't trust a ZOMGAN. But instead, Rishul simply thanked him, placed a hand on Juho's head, and said he knew he would listen. With a smile, the ZOMGAN executive patted the boy's head and remarked that, as expected, the master's lackeys were quite useful, leaving Juho confused. Then Rishul said that now it was time to move on to what really mattered. He leaped away, leaving Juho wondering if maybe he had judged the ZOMGAN executive wrong, which seemed cooler than he thought. Covered in green slime and with sharp weapons in her hands, Chiso Che-Jae ran, and Rishul called out to her. With an imposing air and his form restored, the ZOMGAN executive declared that the high-class ZOMGAN had arrived. With a revelation of power, Rishul's eyes turned orange, and he activated the red path. Using a special technique called spinning leg, he struck Chiso Che-Jae with a powerful blow. Rishul laughed loudly and remarked that the scientist had been right. He remembered when he asked Juho if he would help him recover his original body, and the boy confirmed that the captain had approved it. Holding a tube with red liquid, Commander Nuri told Rishul to use it to return to his old form, warning that the effect would last no more than 1 hour. Juho asked what that mixture was. Nuri explained that it was the red element of their hero, and that she had found healing potential in it. She said that by using it, parts of Rishul's body could regenerate, and since it was the protagonist's red liquid, even his clothes would return to normal. Surprised, Juho commented that of course not everything would go back to normal, and that it didn't work on humans or other living beings. Rishul, in his transformed state, shouted that the current focus of the research was only on living ZOMGANs. Even with that potion, Juho thought Rishul would still be a big help as the ZOMGAN executive, now with a sword, attacked Chiso Che-Jae with fury. Watching the fight, Juho remarked that if they were talking about real help, Rishul definitely seemed strong now. Annoyed, Chiso Che-Jae said that Brat was stronger than she was. Worried, Juho thought he knew he had to trust him, but to be honest, he was scared that Rishul wouldn't be able to beat her. With a threatening look, Chiso Che-Jae told Rishul to get out of the way and go to hell. The ZOMGAN executive replied that she was the one getting in his way. Thinking to himself, Rishul admitted Juho had been right, that for a long time, his appearances had been kind of comical. But in the end, Juho's thoughts were completely wrong. Continuing his assault, Rishul unleashed a sequence of strong blows on Chiso Che-Jae. He then revealed that the real problem was himself. With a final strike, Rishul smashed Chiso Che-Jae to the ground, leaving her covered in green slime and completely defeated. Standing on the fallen ZOMGAN captain's hair, the ZOMGAN executive coldly declared that she was the one actually getting in the way. With his eye glowing red, Rishul stated that he needed to see the master, even if just for one more second. In her pain, Chiso Che-Jae recalled a deep truth she had forgotten, something Juho had no idea about. A few years ago, in the golden age of ZOMGAN society, Rishul was a living legend. With an impressive physique and brilliant mind, he was a Freudian, a ZOMGAN with exceptional powers. He became a chief faster than anyone in history, earning the nickname Legendary Super Rookie. That was Rishul. A status symbol, he was associated with luxury watches, power, and elegance, but his fame didn't last. Lacking motivation and the will to live, he began to withdraw and was soon forgotten, buried in the memories of others. Now at that moment the legend had returned. Back in the present, now allied with the humans, Rishul made the ZOMGAN captain groan in pain under his feet. Furious and humiliated, she asked what the hell was wrong with him. Angrily, Chiso Che-Jae questioned why he, a ZOMGAN like her, was fighting for the humans. She pointed at her hair, saying it was made from strands taken from her sister's head and reimplanted onto her own. She also showed her skirt, explaining that it had also belonged to her sister and had been rebuilt piece by piece. Screaming, the ZOMGAN captain said she had lost everything because of the humans, her sisters, her face, her life. Armed and with tears in her eyes, she grieved over having lost absolutely everything. Crying, Chiso Che-Jae asked why Rishul wouldn't comfort her, why he still chose to fight alongside the humans. With a hard stare and a fiercely glowing eye, Rishul replied that she was a ZOMGAN now too. After that, there was silence. Surprised, Juho wanted to understand why Rishul had stopped attacking, and if Chiso Che-Jae's words had affected him. With a suspicious look, the boy thought that, as expected, a ZOMGAN couldn't be trusted. Holding the remote, Juho shouted for Ritual to finish her. Then the ZOMGAN executive called out to Ji So Chojai. Without understanding, the ZOMGAN captain was surprised when he asked what she meant by that. As he attacked, Ritual continued questioning what would happen if she lost a leg or her hair, and who would even care. With his arms crossed and a serious expression, the ZOMGAN executive prepared himself. Soon after, he unleashed immense power, hitting Ji So Chojai and her sisters with a massive explosion of energy. The force of the attack created a huge cloud of dust and debris. With his eye glowing red, Ritual said that each of the fallen had their own story. Approaching Ji So Chojai, who was down and defeated, he asked if she had ever listened to the stories of all those she had killed. Holding one of her weapons, the ZOMGAN captain replied that of course not, because the stories of the weak weren't worth her time. Quickly, Ritual said he didn't care either. Then he grabbed Ji So Chojai's red hair. With a final blow, the ZOMGAN executive finished her off. Looking at her with disdain, Ritual said it was because they weren't worth his time. Holding the remote control, Juho was speechless and swallowed hard. Calling the boy, the ZOMGAN executive said they should go, surprising Juho. With a cheerful smile and flushed face, Ritual shouted that they were going to see the master. Starting to hop and dance with joy, Juho just watched, a bit scared. Thinking it was a scare, the boy thought Ritual was going to kill him and concluded that ZOMGANs were terrifying and dangerous. Despite being of the same species, Ritual ran excitedly, while Juho thought that nonetheless he had killed her mercilessly. Watching the ZOMGAN executive, Juho wondered how strong he really was. Suddenly, he thought about how strong our hero truly was, to be toying with Ritual like he was a ragdoll. The protagonist appeared imposing with a red aura behind him, facing Urier. Panting in collapse, Urier watched the young man approach with his enormous sword, commenting that it was heady. With an expression of fear and respect, he thought of Paladin and Ritual, and how they could face a monster like that. Comparing the protagonist to a mountain, Urier felt like he was climbing a peak he could never reach. Reaching out his hand, the protagonist told Urier to take his sword, and the ZOMGAN remained silent. Gripping the weapon's hilt, Urier thought he wasn't sure before if the boy was being merciful or just finding it all amusing. While our hero observed him, the hat-wearing ZOMGAN engulfed in flames said he truly couldn't tell. Unleashing a powerful strike with his flaming sword, Urier launched the protagonist backward. Placing a hand on his back, the young man felt the impact of the blow. Soon after, he tore out his own spine, which transformed into a weapon. With the spine in hand, the protagonist rested it on his shoulder, ready for battle. A black slime began oozing from his body, appearing to transform him. Surprised, Urier watched our hero raise his body temperature and boil his blood, wondering if he would use it as fire. With a drop of sweat falling, the hat-wearing ZOMGAN thought that Punk was imitating him. Leaping toward Urier, the protagonist surprised him with the move. Using the spine like a flaming sword, our hero attacked the ZOMGAN, who found the fighting style extremely annoying. Stretching like a web, the black slime from the boy's body spread out. With his hands now coated in black slime and forming claws, the protagonist grabbed Urier's hat, leaving him shocked. With a face twisted in rage, the hat-wearing ZOMGAN screamed as our hero struck him hard, slamming him to the ground. Delivering a final blow with his spine weapon, the protagonist made Urier scream in pain. Silently, our hero observed the result of his attack. Fallen, Urier was confused. On the ground, the hat-wearing ZOMGAN asked why the boy wouldn't kill him if he was waiting for orders, and he said no. The protagonist's order was to kill employees, nothing more. At that moment, however, a strange feeling of solidarity arose within our hero. Surprising the protagonist, Urier asked what part of the past the boy wanted to forget. With his sword at his side, the ZOMGAN asked if our hero had already forgotten the past. Amid the bamboo, the boy asked why Urier was asking that. Suspicious, the hat-wearing ZOMGAN wanted to know if the protagonist felt sorry for him, and was told no. In a sincere tone, our hero confessed he had a memory from the past he wanted to forget, surprising Urier. Silently, the hat-wearing ZOMGAN just processed it. The boy then explained that not everyone went through this, but kids fight and then make up as if nothing had happened. According to him, that happened because of mutual understanding through the exchange of emotions during the fight. And concluding, the protagonist said that sometimes, trading blows helps one understand the other's feelings.
Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.